She was counting the same $10 for the fourth time when she heard the cough that made her blood run cold, not from her daughters who'd been coughing for 3 days, but from the silence that fell over the entire pharmacy because a man who could buy every pill in the building just got in line behind a woman who couldn't afford one prescription. And when he saw what she was choosing between, medicine for dying children or one more day of running from the men who'd threatened to sell them, he didn't just pay for the antibiotics. He decided who would pay with their lives for putting her in that position. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. Elena Santos had forgotten what it meant to breathe without fear. 6 months ago, she knew exactly who she was. A wife to Marco, a mother to twin daughters, a woman with a modest apartment and a life that wasn't glamorous but was hers. She'd wake up to her husband's kiss, watch him leave for construction sites, spend her days working and caring for Maya and Sophia, and fall asleep in a bed that felt safe. Now she had nothing. No husband, no home, no hope. Just 2 5-year-old girls who still believed their mother could protect them from monsters. She stood in line at the 24-hour pharmacy at 11:15 p.m., her olive green jacket zipped to her throat even though the building's heat made sweat bead along her hairline. She couldn't take it off. Beneath it, her shirt was threadbare and stained, marked by weeks of sleeping in her car in cheap motels. Her daughters pressed against her sides like frightened birds seeking shelter. Maya on her left, Sophia on her right, both burning with fever that had raged for 3 days. Maya wore a thin pink sweater, pilled at the elbows, holes forming at the seams. Sophia's was identical but in blue, a matched set from better days. Their blonde hair hung limp and uncombed because Elena couldn't remember the last time they'd had access to a real shower. Their faces were flushed from fever, their eyes glassy and unfocused, their small bodies swaying with exhaustion. They had learned not to complain. They had learned that Mama's tears meant danger was close. They had learned to be silent and invisible, to take up as little space as possible in a world that wanted to swallow them whole. Elena's eyes burned as she stared at the crumpled bills in her hand. $9.73. That was everything. That was all that stood between her daughters and another night of fever-racked sleep that might not end in morning. She'd called ahead, asked the pharmacist specifically about children's fever reducer and cough syrup. The generic brands, the cheapest ones. He'd told her $9.48 with tax. She'd counted her money 7 times before walking 6 blocks through the October rain because she couldn't afford bus fare. But she'd forgotten about the antibiotics. 3 people stood ahead of her in line. She watched each transaction with mounting dread, watching dollars exchange hands like they meant nothing. An elderly man buying heart medication, $1.87. A young woman purchasing vitamins, $1.43. A teenager with acne cream, $1.22. Numbers from a different universe, a different life where people could afford to be healthy. When her turn came, her throat was so tight she could barely speak. The pharmacist, Mr. Chin, his name tag read, looked at her with kind but tired eyes. "Picking up for Santos?" he asked gently. "No, her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. "I called earlier. About the children's medication. The fever reducer and cough syrup." He nodded and turned to the shelves. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she watched him scan the items. But then his expression changed. He looked at the twins, really looked at them, and concern deepened the lines around his eyes. "Mrs. Santos," he said carefully, "these will help with the symptoms, but I'm looking at your daughters and I'm concerned this might be developing into bronchitis. They need antibiotics." The world tilted. How much? The generic amoxicillin would be $35. But without them, if this progresses to pneumonia? Just the fever medicine. Her voice came out strangled. "Please. Just what I can afford." The silence that followed felt like drowning. She could feel the other customers watching, their pity pressing against her like a physical weight. Behind her, someone shifted impatiently. Elena wanted to disappear, to vanish into the floor, to wake up from this nightmare that had become her life. This wasn't supposed to be her story. 6 months ago, Marco had kissed her goodbye before heading to the construction site. 6 months ago, she'd planned dinner and helped the twins with their colors and thought about saving for a real house with a backyard. 6 months ago, her biggest worry was whether they could afford a family vacation. Then the scaffolding collapsed. Then the hospital bills came. Then the funeral costs. And 2 weeks after she buried her husband, 2 weeks after she'd stood at his grave with her daughters crying against her legs, Men in expensive suits appeared at her door with papers she didn't understand and demands she couldn't meet. Marco had borrowed $50,000 for a business opportunity that was supposed to change their lives. He'd never told her, never warned her. And the men who'd lent it to him didn't care about widows or sick children or desperate pleas. They cared about their money. When Elena couldn't pay, they took everything: furniture, electronics, Marco's truck, his tools, even her wedding ring. And when she showed them empty bank statements and begged for mercy, one of them had looked at her 5-year-old daughters and smiled. There are other ways to work off a debt, Mrs. Santos. And we know people who pay very good money for pretty little girls. So she ran, packed one bag, took her daughters, and disappeared into the night. That was 4 months ago. 4 months of looking over her shoulder, sleeping in her car, working cash jobs, moving every few days. 4 months of feeding her girls while she starved. 4 months of telling herself that tomorrow would be better, that she just needed to survive one more day. And then the twins got sick. Mr. Chin was bagging her inadequate medication when Elena felt it, that prickling awareness on the back of her neck that meant she was being watched. She turned slightly and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing behind her in line didn't belong in this neighborhood, didn't belong in this world. Everything about him screamed power and money: the black wool coat that probably cost more than she'd earned in a year, the perfectly tailored clothes beneath it, the dark eyes that missed nothing. And behind him, 2 other men positioned near the entrance, not shopping, not browsing, just watching with the stillness of predators. Elena's blood turned to ice. They found us. Her hand instinctively moved to cover Sophia's head, pulling both twins closer. Maya's cough rattled through the pharmacy, a wet, desperate sound. Sophia whimpered and pressed her burning face against Elena's leg. The man's gaze dropped to the children, then to the medication on the counter, then to the crumpled bills in Elena's shaking hand. His expression was unreadable, carved from marble, revealing nothing. Mr. Chin handed her the small bag. "That'll be $9.48. Elena's fingers fumbled with the bills, hands shaking so violently she dropped a quarter. It rolled across the floor, the sound impossibly loud in the silent pharmacy, each rotation like a countdown to something terrible. Sophia started to cough, deep, racking convulsions that shook her small body. Maya began to cry, a quiet, exhausted sound that broke Elena's heart. Elena bent to retrieve the quarter, and when she straightened, the man in the black coat was watching her with an intensity that made her want to run. But there was nowhere to go. No escape. No hope left. She handed the money to Mr. Chin, took her pathetic bag of insufficient medicine, and turned toward the door. Her daughters could barely walk. Sophia was burning up, her small body radiating heat even through Elena's coat. Maya was coughing so hard she was gagging. "We're not going to make it. Sophia needs antibiotics. She needs them now or she's going to die." Elena's vision blurred with tears as she took a step toward the exit. And then the man in the black coat spoke, his voice low and dangerous and strangely gentle all at once. "Wait." Elena's world narrowed to that single word. Wait. It hung in the air between them like a command from someone who expected obedience, who'd never been told no in his life. Every instinct screamed at her to run, grab the twins and bolt through that door into the cold October night, disappear into the darkness where men in expensive coats couldn't follow. But Sophia chose that exact moment to go completely limp. 1 second she was standing, barely but standing, and the next her small body was collapsing, her eyes rolling back, her limbs beginning to convulse. Elena caught her just before she hit the floor, dropping the pharmacy bag, her own knees buckling under the sudden weight. "Sophia. Baby, no, no, no." Her voice came out as a shriek that didn't sound like her own. Maya started screaming. "Mama. What's wrong with Sophia? Mama." The pharmacy exploded into chaos. Mr. Chin vaulted over the counter. Other customers surged forward. And through it all, Elena knelt on the cold linoleum floor, cradling her convulsing daughter, watching Sophia's face turn a shade of red that meant her fever had spiked beyond dangerous. "She's having a febrile seizure," Mr. Chin said, his professional training kicking in. "We need to get her temperature down, we need an ambulance." "No." Elena's arms tightened around Sophia. "No hospitals, no ambulances, they'll find us, they'll take her. Ma'am, your daughter could die. She could die if they find us." Elena was sobbing now, rocking Sophia's seizing body, completely unraveling. "You don't understand, they'll take them, they said they'd take them." And then he was there. The man in the black coat, kneeling beside her with a presence that made everyone else step back. Up close, he was even more intimidating, sharp jaw, dark eyes that had seen things Elena couldn't imagine, hands that looked like they could break bones without effort. But those hands were reaching for her daughter with surprising gentleness. "Let me see her." His voice cut through Elena's panic like a blade through silk, calm, controlled, absolute. "Don't touch her." Elena tried to pull Sophia away, but her arms were shaking too badly. "Listen to me." He didn't reach again, just held her gaze with an intensity that forced her scattered thoughts into focus. "Your daughter is having a febrile seizure. If we don't get her to a hospital in the next 5 minutes, she could have brain damage or she could die. Your fear of whoever's chasing you won't matter if she's dead. Do you understand?" The brutal honesty of it cut through her terror. Elena looked down at Sophia, her baby girl, convulsing in her arms, her small face flushed deep red, foam at the corners of her mouth. Maya was clinging to Elena's jacket, sobbing, terrified. She had no choice. She'd run out of choices the moment Sophia got sick. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, please help her." The man moved with the efficiency of someone who'd handled crises before. He scooped Sophia into his arms, gentle despite his obvious strength, and stood in one fluid motion. "Car. Now," he barked to one of his men. Then to Mr. Chin, "Put together everything these children need. Full course of antibiotics, fever reducers, the works. I'll settle the bill later." Mr. Chin didn't argue, just started grabbing bottles. The man looked down at Elena, still kneeling on the floor. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. "Then get up and bring your other daughter. We're going to Mercy Heights private wing. My doctor is meeting us there." "I can't afford." "I didn't ask if you could afford it." His voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. "I told you what's happening. Now move." Elena scrambled to her feet, grabbed Maya's hand and followed him out into the night. A black Mercedes SUV idled at the curb, door already open. The man placed Sophia carefully in the back seat, then stood aside so Elena could climb in after her. Maya squeezed in beside them, still crying, trying to touch her sister's hand. The man slid into the front passenger seat as the driver pulled away from the curb. He had his phone out, already dialing. "Reeves, it's Moretti. 5-year-old girl, febrile seizure, untreated respiratory infection for 3 days. Have a room ready and your best pediatric team standing by. Money is not an issue. Moretti." The name registered somewhere in the back of Elena's panicked mind. She'd heard it whispered in her old neighborhood, always with a mixture of fear and respect. Dante Moretti. The man who ran half the city. The kingpin. "Please," she whispered, cradling Sophia's seizing body. "Please don't let her die. Please." Moretti turned in his seat, his dark eyes meeting hers in the dim interior. "She's not going to die. We'll be there in 4 minutes, and Dr. Reeves is the best pediatric specialist in the state. But you need to tell me, who are you running from?" "I can't. If they find out I talked to anyone, they won't find out from me." His voice was quiet but absolute. "But I need to know what we're dealing with. Are they following you now?" Elena shook her head frantically. "I don't think so. We've been moving every few days. I've been so careful." "Who are they?" The way he said it, not what are they but who, told Elena he understood the kind of danger she was running from. The kind that had names and faces and connections. "Loan sharks," she whispered, the words like acid in her throat. "My husband borrowed money before he died. They came to collect. They took everything. And when I couldn't pay, her voice broke completely. "They looked at my daughters and said there were other ways to settle debts. That they knew people who'd pay good money for pretty little girls." The temperature in the car seemed to drop 10 degrees. Moretti's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jumping. The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. The other man in the back seat muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. "Names?" Moretti said, his voice deadly quiet. "Give me their names." "I can't, they'll kill me. They won't get the chance." He turned fully in his seat now, his gaze holding hers. "Because as of right now, you and your daughters are under my protection. And anyone who threatens you will answer to me. So I'll ask you one more time, names?" Elena looked at this dangerous stranger who was rushing her dying daughter to a hospital, who just declared protection she didn't understand, whose very presence made grown men step back in fear. She looked at Sophia, still convulsing in her arms. At Maya, terrified and crying. She'd been running for 4 months with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. And now this man, this terrifying, powerful man, was offering her something that felt impossible. Safety. "Victor Castillo," she whispered. "And his nephew Ricky." Moretti's eyes flashed with recognition. "I know them." "You do?" His smile was terrifying. "Oh yes. They operate in my territory. Or they did. The SUV screeched to a halt in front of a private entrance Elena had never known existed. The door flew open and medical staff swarmed. A doctor, 2 nurses, all moving with practiced efficiency. Elena found herself being ushered out, Sophia taken from her arms and placed on a gurney, Maya clinging to her hand as they rushed through automatic doors into bright, sterile hallways. "Mom, I need you to stay here," a nurse said gently, guiding her into a family waiting room. "We'll take good care of her, but you need to let the doctors work." "I can't leave her." "You're not leaving her. You're letting us save her." The nurse's eyes were kind but firm. "Sit down before you fall down. When's the last time you ate?" Elena couldn't remember. "Yesterday? The day before?" The nurse squeezed her shoulder. "I'll bring you something. And your other daughter, what's her name?" "Maya." "Hi, Maya." The nurse crouched down to Maya's level. "Are you feeling sick too?" Maya nodded, still crying. "My throat hurts and I'm hot." "Okay, sweetheart. We're going to take care of you too. Your mama can stay right here and we'll make you feel better, okay?" Moretti appeared in the doorway, his coat gone, his expression still hard but focused. "Dr. Reeves wants to examine both girls. Get them on 4 antibiotics, bring their fevers down. The other one, Maya, she's got the same thing, just not as advanced." The nurse nodded and held out her hand to Maya. "Come with me, honey. Your mom will be right here." Maya looked at Elena with terrified eyes. "Mama?" "It's okay, baby." Elena forced the words out past the lump in her throat. "Go with the nice nurse. I'll be right here. I promise." She watched Maya get led away, the stranger's hand in a nurse's hand, and felt like she was being torn in half. Both her daughters out of sight, in the hands of people she didn't know, in a situation she couldn't control. She sank into a chair and put her face in her hands. Footsteps approached. She felt Moretti sit down in the chair beside her, not too close, respecting her space, but near enough to be present. "They're in good hands," he said quietly. "Dr. Reeves has been my personal physician for 15 years. He saved my life twice. He'll save your daughters." Elena couldn't respond. Could only shake her head, tears streaming through her fingers. "When's the last time you slept?" She laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "I don't remember." "When's the last time you ate?" 2 days ago. Maybe 3. She felt him shift beside her. "Rico," he called to one of his men. "Coffee and food from the cafeteria. Sandwiches, something substantial. Now." "I can't eat," Elena whispered. "You will. Because your daughters need you conscious and functioning, not passed out from starvation." He was right, but the thought of food made her stomach turn. Still, she lowered her hands and looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time since this nightmare had exploded into something even more surreal. Up close, without the adrenaline and panic clouding her vision, she could see details. The scar through his left eyebrow. The silver ring on his right hand. The way his eyes weren't just dark, but seemed to carry the weight of things she'd never understand. He was probably in his early 30s, though he had the bearing of someone much older. Someone who'd lived lifetimes in those years. "Why are you helping us?" The question came out small, broken. "You don't even know us." Moretti was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the opposite wall. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough around the edges. "Because 25 years ago, I was 8 years old and I watched my mother try to buy medicine for my little sister. And she didn't have enough money." He paused. "My mother begged the pharmacist for mercy. Begged him to let her pay in installments to give her more time. And he said no. And my sister," his jaw clenched. "She got sicker. And sicker. And by the time my mother scraped together enough money, it was too late." Elena's breath caught. "She died." "She almost did. Spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Came home different. Weaker." His hands curled into fists on his knees. "And I swore that if I ever had power, if I ever had money, I would never let that happen to another child. Never let another mother have to choose between medicine and food." "Is that why you—" She didn't know how to finish the question. "Is that why you became what you are? Is that why you built an empire?" "Part of it." He looked at her directly now. "I grew up watching the powerful prey on the weak. Watching men like Victor Castillo destroy families for profit. And I decided that if I was going to survive in that world, I would do it differently. I would use power to protect, not destroy. People say you're dangerous. I am dangerous. No hesitation, no apology. But my danger is directed at people who deserve it. At men who prey on widows and threaten children." His eyes held hers. "You and your daughters? You have nothing to fear from me. But Victor and Ricky, We'll never touch you again. I promise you that. Rico returned with a cardboard tray, coffee, sandwiches, fruit. Elena's stomach growled traitorously at the smell. Moretti took the tray and set it on the table in front of her. Eat, he said simply. I can't until I know they're okay. Mrs. Santos. He waited until she looked at him. Your daughters are going to wake up asking for you. They're going to need you strong and healthy. So eat. That's not a request. There was something in his voice, an authority that had nothing to do with violence and everything to do with certainty, that made her reach for a sandwich. The first bite was tasteless in her mouth, but she forced herself to chew, to swallow, to take another bite. They sat in silence as she ate mechanically, Moretti beside her like a silent guardian. At one point his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, typed something, then returned his attention to the hallway where her daughters had disappeared. You said you know Victor and Ricky, Elena said finally, washing down the sandwich with coffee that was too hot and too bitter but somehow perfect. How? They've been operating in my territory for about 3 years. I've been aware of them. His expression darkened. What I wasn't aware of was what they were actually doing. The kinds of people they were targeting. And now I'm very interested in having a conversation with them. The way he said conversation made it clear he meant something very different from talking. But first, I need to know everything. Your husband's name. How much he borrowed. What they took. What they threatened. Everything. Elena's hands tightened around the coffee cup. If I tell you, if they find out I talked. They won't find out. And even if they did, it wouldn't matter. Because they will never get within a mile of you or your daughters ever again. How can you promise that? Moretti's smile was cold and terrible. Because men like Victor and Ricky only survive as long as I allow them to. And I've decided I'm done allowing it. Before Elena could respond, Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway. He was older, gray-haired, with the calm competence of someone who'd seen everything. His expression was serious but not panicked. Mrs. Santos? Elena shot to her feet. My daughters, are they? They're stable, he said quickly, holding up a calming hand. Sophia's seizure has stopped. We've got both girls on 4 fluids and antibiotics, and their fevers are coming down. But I need to be honest with you. He paused, his gaze steady. Your daughter Sophia was very close. Another 12 hours without treatment and we'd be looking at pneumonia, possibly fatal. You got her here just in time. Elena's legs gave out. She would have hit the floor if Moretti hadn't caught her, his hands firm on her arms, holding her upright. Can I see them? Her voice came out as a whisper. In a few minutes. We're still getting them settled. But Mrs. Santos, Dr. Reeves's expression was gentle but concerned. Your daughters are severely dehydrated and malnourished. Both of them. How long has this been going on? Shame flooded through Elena, hot and suffocating. I've been feeding them. I swear I've been. I'm not accusing you. I'm asking because I need to understand the full scope of what we're treating. His voice was professional, kind. How long have resources been limited? For months, she whispered. Since we started running. Dr. Reeves nodded slowly. And you? When's the last time you had a proper meal? Elena couldn't answer. I thought so. Dante, he turned to Moretti, she needs fluids too. And a full exam. She's showing signs of severe malnutrition herself. No, Elena protested weakly. I'm fine. I just need to see my daughters. You'll see them, Moretti said firmly. After you let Dr. Reeves check you out. Non-negotiable. But, Mrs. Santos. Moretti's voice was quiet but absolute. Your daughters almost lost their mother tonight because you've been starving yourself to keep them alive. You're no good to them dead. So you're going to let the doctor help you. And then we're going to make sure this never happens again. Do you understand? Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to fight. But she had nothing left. No strength, no resistance, no options. She'd been running on empty for so long that the tank had finally cracked. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Moretti guided her back to the chair, surprisingly gentle for someone so dangerous. I'm going to step outside and make some calls. But Rico will be right here and Dr. Reeves is going to take care of you. When I come back we're going to talk about what happens next. All of it. He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. Elena? That's your name, right? Elena Santos. She nodded. Elena, I need you to understand something. His dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're safe now. Your daughters are safe. And I'm going to make sure the men who put you in this position answer for what they've done. That's not a threat or a promise. It's just a fact. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with Rico and Dr. Reeves, her world tilted so completely off its axis that she couldn't find north anymore. All she knew was that Sophia and Maya were alive. They were breathing. They were being helped. And somehow, impossibly, the most dangerous man in the city had just declared himself their protector. Elena didn't understand it. Couldn't process it. Could only sit in that chair and let Dr. Reeves examine her while she waited to hold her daughters again. Outside the hospital, Dante Moretti stood in the cold October night, phone pressed to his ear, fury burning cold and controlled in his chest. "Find them," he said quietly into the phone. "Victor and Ricky Castillo. I want them picked up by dawn. Clean, quiet, no witnesses. Enrico? Yeah, boss? When you bring them in, make sure they understand they're not just being questioned. They're being judged." He hung up and stared at the city skyline, thinking about a terrified widow counting $10, about two little girls burning with fever, about the way Elena had looked at him, like he was simultaneously her salvation and her doom. He thought about his mother, dead at 35, worn down by debt and desperation. He thought about his sister Isabella, who'd survived her childhood illness but never really recovered, who'd died at 19 with demons Elena would never have to face. And he made a decision that would change everything. Victor and Ricky had threatened children, had used his name to terrorize the vulnerable, had broken the one rule Dante held sacred. They'd just signed their own death warrants. They just didn't know it yet. The hospital waiting room felt suspended in time, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the faint antiseptic smell that clung to everything, the occasional footsteps echoing down distant corridors. Elena sat wrapped in a blanket a nurse had provided, and 4-line running into her arm because Dr. Reeves had insisted she was dangerously dehydrated. She'd stopped arguing. Arguing required energy she didn't have. Rico stood near the door like a statue, silent and watchful. Every few minutes his phone would buzz and he'd glance at it, type something, then return to his vigil. Elena wanted to ask what those messages were about, but fear kept her quiet. Some answers were better left unknown. Dr. Reeves had assured her the girls were sleeping comfortably, that their fevers had dropped to manageable levels, that the antibiotics were already working their magic. She could see them soon, he promised. Just let them rest a bit longer. So she waited. And tried not to think about the man who'd saved them, the dangerous man who was somewhere making phone calls about Victor and Ricky, about men who'd threatened to sell her daughters. The door opened and Moretti walked in, his presence immediately filling the space. He looked tired now, she realized. The careful control was still there, but underneath it she could see something that looked almost like exhaustion. "How are you feeling?" he asked, taking the seat beside her. "Like I'm in a dream." Elena's voice was hoarse. "A really strange, terrifying dream." "It's not a dream." He gestured to the 4. "How much longer on that?" 10 more minutes, Dr. Reeves said. Moretti nodded, then leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in his lap. For a moment he just sat there in silence. Then, "I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning. Your husband's name, how he died, what happened after. All of it." Elena's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because I need to understand the full scope of what Victor and Ricky have done. And because," he paused, his jaw clenching slightly, "because I need to know how many other families they've destroyed." "Other families?" His dark eyes met hers. "Men like them don't start with someone like you. They build up to it. Which means there are others. And I intend to find every single one." Elena pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The story felt like poison in her throat, but she forced it out anyway. His name was Marco. Marco Santos. What did he do? Construction. High-rise buildings mostly. He loved it, being up high, building things that would last. Her voice caught. He used to tell the girls that every building in the city had a piece of their papa in it. Moretti's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "How did he die?" "Scaffolding collapse. 6 months ago." The words came out flat, emotionless, because that was the only way she could say them anymore. "He was 29 years old. We'd just celebrated our 6th anniversary. The twins had just turned 5. "I'm sorry." Elena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. What happened after? And so she told him. All of it. The hospital where she'd identified Marco's body, so broken she could barely recognize him. The funeral that ate through their small savings. The 2 weeks of numbness where she tried to figure out how to keep living, how to explain to 2 5-year-olds that Papa wasn't coming home ever again. "And then they came," she whispered. 2 weeks after the funeral. I was getting the girls ready for bed when someone knocked on the door. She could still see it so clearly, Victor's cruel smile, Ricky's cold eyes, the papers they'd shoved in her face with Marco's signature at the bottom. They said Marco had borrowed $50,000 for a food truck business. He wanted to start his own company, give us a better life. Her hands twisted in the blanket. I didn't know. He never told me. He must have been trying to surprise us, or maybe he was embarrassed about the debt. I don't know. I'll never know. Moretti's voice was careful, controlled. What did the loan documents say? That he'd put up his truck in our apartment deposit as collateral. That the loan was due in full within 6 months, or they could seize the collateral. Elena's voice broke. He'd had the loan for 4 months when he died. Which meant I had 2 months to come up with $50,000 or lose everything. What did you do? I begged them for time. Showed them bank statements. We had $300 in checking. I told them about Marco's life insurance, that it would take months to process. I offered to pay in installments to get a second job, anything. She was crying now, unable to stop the tears. They said they don't do mercy. That debt doesn't die with a man. Moretti's hands had curled into fists on his knees. What happened next? They came back a week later. With a truck and 4 other men. They took our couch, our dining table, the TV, all of Marco's tools from the garage. The girls' bunk beds. Her voice rose with the injustice of it. Maya and Sophia watched them carry away their beds, and they just stood there crying, and Victor laughed. He actually laughed. Rico shifted by the door, his expression hardening. How much did they take? Moretti's voice was deadly quiet. Marco's truck was worth $12,000. The tools maybe $8,000. The furniture, she tried to calculate, maybe $4,000? They took jewelry, electronics, everything of value. And I'd already given them $2,000 cash from what little savings we had. So roughly $26,000 worth of assets. Yes. But they said it wasn't enough. That with interest and fees, I still owed them $73,000. The number hung in the air like an obscenity. Explain that math to me, Moretti said, his voice deceptively calm. They said the original loan had interest, 20% monthly. And then there were late fees, collection fees, administrative costs. Every time I talked to them, the number got bigger. Elena's laugh was bitter. I realized after the 3rd visit that they were never going to let me pay it off. The debt was designed to grow faster than I could ever pay it. Moretti turned to Rico. Monthly interest of 20% compounds to 791% annually, Rico said flatly. Usury laws cap interest at 25% per year. What they were charging is completely illegal. Elena stared at them. What? The loan documents they showed you, Moretti said. They're not worth the paper they're printed on. No court in the country would uphold them. Any lawyer could have told you that in 5 minutes. The knowledge hit Elena like a physical blow. I didn't know. I didn't think to ask a lawyer. I was so scared, so overwhelmed. That's what they count on, Moretti said grimly. They target people who are vulnerable, isolated, terrified. People who don't know their rights. He leaned forward slightly. What happened after they took your possessions? Elena closed her eyes, the memory making her nauseous. They came back 2 weeks later with eviction papers. Said Marco had signed over the apartment rights as part of the collateral. Gave me 24 hours to vacate. And that's when they threatened your daughters. It wasn't a question, but Elena nodded anyway. I was begging them for more time. I had nowhere to go, no money, 2 little girls. And Victor, she had to stop, had to force the words out past the horror of the memory. Victor looked at Maya and Sophia. Really looked at them. And he said, you know, Mrs. Santos, there are other ways to work off a debt. Moretti went absolutely still. Ricky laughed and said he knew people who'd pay good money for pretty little girls. That blonde twins were especially valuable. Elena was shaking now, the blanket falling from her shoulders. That's when I knew. They weren't just going to take my home. They were going to take my children. What did you do? I grabbed the girls and I ran. I had $200 hidden in a drawer, emergency money Marco had insisted we keep. I packed 1 bag, took the twins, and we left that night. We've been running ever since. The silence that followed was suffocating. Moretti sat completely motionless, his expression carved from stone. But Elena could see something churning beneath the surface, something cold and furious and absolutely merciless. How many times have they found you? His voice was barely above a whisper. 3 times. The first time was at a shelter 2 weeks after we ran. I don't know how they knew we were there. They didn't come inside, just waited outside until I saw them. We left through a back door. The second time? A month ago. At a motel on the east side. Victor knocked on the door at 2 in the morning. I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there, smiling. He didn't try to force his way in. Just said, "We know where you are now. We'll always know." Then he left. Rico swore under his breath. And the third time? Moretti asked. 2 weeks ago. At a different motel. This time it was Ricky. He left a note under the door. It said, "Stop running. You're just making this harder on yourself. When we catch you, and we will, your daughters will pay for every day you made us chase you." Elena watched Moretti's jaw clench so hard she thought she heard his teeth grinding. "How have they been tracking you?" "I don't know. I've been so careful, paying cash for everything, avoiding cameras moving every few days. But they keep finding us." Her voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "It's like they have eyes everywhere. Like there's nowhere safe." Moretti pulled out his phone, typed something, then looked at Rico. "I want to know if they have anyone in police, CPS, social services. Anyone who'd have access to shelter records or motel registries." Rico nodded. "Already on it, boss. Marcus is pulling everything, bank records, phone logs, known associates." "Wait," Elena said. "Who's Marcus?" "My financial specialist. He's very good at finding patterns in data." Moretti's attention returned to her. "Elena, I need you to tell me something honestly. Have you gone to the police at all? Filed any reports?" She shook her head. "Victor said he had friends in the department. That if I went to the police they'd call him before they even took my statement. And then," she couldn't finish. "And then your daughters would disappear," Moretti said quietly. He was probably telling the truth. Men like Victor usually have at least one cop on the payroll. Maybe more. "So what do I do?" Elena's voice cracked. "How do I keep them safe?" Moretti stood, his full height suddenly imposing in the small room. He walked to the window, staring out at the city lights beyond. When he spoke, his voice was different, harder, colder, absolutely certain. "You do nothing. You stay here with your daughters until they're well enough to be discharged. Then I'm putting you in a safe location, a real one, not a motel. Somewhere Victor and Ricky will never find." "How can you promise that?" He turned to face her. "Because I own this city in ways Victor Castillo doesn't understand. Because I have resources and connections that make his little operation look like children playing at crime. And because," his voice dropped to something deadly, "because he just made the mistake of operating in my territory without permission, using my name to terrorize people and threatening children under my protection. I'm not under your protection. You don't even know us. You are now." It wasn't a suggestion or an offer. It was a statement of fact. "As of the moment I saw you in that pharmacy, you became my responsibility. And I take my responsibilities very seriously." Elena stared at him, trying to understand. "What? Why do you care about a widow and 2 sick kids you've never met?" Moretti was quiet for a long moment. Then he came back and sat down beside her again, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain. "When I was 8 years old, my father was killed. Gang shooting, wrong place, wrong time. My mother was left with 2 kids and no money." He stared at his hands. "Men came. Said my father owed them gambling debts. They took everything we had. And when my mother couldn't pay, they offered her alternative payment arrangements." Elena's breath caught. "Like what Victor offered me." "Exactly like what Victor offered you." His voice was rough. "My mother did what she had to do to keep me and my sister alive. She borrowed more money to pay the original debt, but the interest kept growing. She worked 3 jobs. Barely slept. Stopped eating so we could eat." "What happened to her?" Moretti's hands curled into fists. "She died when I was 15. Took a whole bottle of pills. Left a note that said she was sorry she couldn't be stronger, sorry she'd failed us." His voice was almost inaudible now. "She didn't fail us. The system failed her. Men like Victor Castillo failed her. And I swore on her grave that if I ever had power, if I ever had the ability to stop men like that, I would. No matter what it cost me." Elena reached out without thinking, her hand covering his fist. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Don't be sorry. Be safe. Let me help you." He looked at her directly, his dark eyes holding hers. "You and your daughters remind me of my family. Every time I look at those little girls, I see my sister Isabella. Every time I see you choosing between impossible options, I see my mother. And I can't," his voice broke slightly, "I can't watch it happen again." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "Your sister, is she?" "She died when she was 19. Drug overdose. The childhood illness weakened her, but what really destroyed her was watching our mother suffer. She never recovered from it." He stood abruptly as if the confession had cost him too much. So when I tell you I'm going to protect you and your daughters, I'm not being noble or charitable. I'm being selfish. Because saving you means I didn't completely fail my family. Dante, it was the first time she'd used his first name. The debt is cancelled, he said, his voice firm again, back in control. All of it. You owe Victor and Ricky nothing. In fact, they owe you approximately $35,000, the difference between what your husband actually borrowed and what they stole from you. I don't understand. You will. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a conversation with Victor and Ricky about their business practices. By the time that conversation is over, they're going to repay every widow they victimized, and they're going to leave this city. Permanently. The way he said it, so calm, so certain, sent a chill down Elena's spine. What are you going to do to them? Nothing they don't deserve. He walked to the door, then paused. Get some rest, Elena. In a few hours you can see your daughters. And tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Dante. She waited until he looked back. Thank you. For everything. For saving them. For. She couldn't finish, too overwhelmed. His expression softened. You don't need to thank me. Just take care of your girls. That's all I need. He left with Rico, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Elena sat alone with the drip in her racing thoughts, trying to process everything that had just happened. 6 hours ago, she'd been counting $10 in a pharmacy, certain her daughters were going to die. Now they were safe in hospital beds, being treated by the best doctors, protected by one of the most dangerous men in the city. Now the man who'd threatened to sell her children was about to face consequences from someone who actually had the power to deliver them. Now Elena Santos, widow, mother, survivor, was under the protection of Dante Moretti. She didn't understand it. Couldn't fully grasp how her life had tilted so completely in a single night. But as a nurse came in to remove her and told her she could see the girls now, Elena allowed herself something she hadn't felt in 6 months. Hope. Real, tangible, terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, they were actually going to be okay. She followed the nurse down the hallway to a private room where Maya and Sophia slept in side-by-side beds, for lines running into their small arms, their faces peaceful for the first time in days. Elena sank into the chair between them, taking one small hand in each of hers, and finally let herself cry. Not from fear or desperation this time. From relief. Her daughters were alive. They were safe. And a man who'd lost his own family had decided to make sure Elena didn't lose hers. Outside the hospital, in the back of his Mercedes, Dante stared at his phone. Messages from Marcus were already coming through, financial records, property holdings, phone logs. The beginning of Victor Castillo's unraveling. When do you want to bring them in? Rico asked from the driver's seat. Dawn. I want them to have one more night of thinking they're safe. Dante's smile was cold. And I want them to wake up to the realization that their entire world just ended. Rico glanced in the rearview mirror. You're really doing this? Taking on a widow and her kids? I already have. Dante's voice was firm. They're under my protection now. Which means anyone who threatens them answers to me. Victor's not going to go quietly. I'm counting on it. Dante's eyes were hard. Because I want him to fight. I want him to resist. It'll make what comes next so much more satisfying. Rico pulled away from the hospital, heading toward Dante's office where Marcus would have the full dossier ready. But Dante's mind was still in that hospital room, watching Elena Santos cry with relief as her daughters slept safely. Watching someone experience the salvation his mother never got. And feeling, for the first time in 20 years, like maybe his power was actually worth something. Like maybe he could use the empire he'd built on vengeance to build something else. Protection for people who had no one else. Safety for mothers who couldn't afford medicine. Justice for children whose innocence had almost been stolen. Victor Castillo had made his last mistake. He just didn't know it yet. The city looked different at 3 a.m., sharper somehow, stripped of its daytime pretenses. Dante stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office on the 42nd floor, watching the lights below flicker like dying stars. Behind him, his conference table was covered with files, photographs, bank statements. The paper trail of Victor Castillo's operation laid bare under the harsh fluorescent lights. Rico entered carrying 2 more boxes. That's the last of it. Marcus pulled records going back 3 years. And? It's worse than we thought, boss. Dante turned from the window. Marcus sat hunched over his laptop at the far end of the table, his fingers flying across the keyboard. At 43, Marcus Chen was the best forensic accountant on the East Coast, former FBI, until he'd gotten tired of watching criminals walk free on technicalities. Now he used his skills for Dante, tracking money through labyrinthine shell corporations and offshore accounts that most people didn't know existed. "Show me," Dante said, taking his seat at the head of the table. Marcus swiveled his laptop around. Victor Castillo, 52. Started this operation approximately 3 years ago after getting fired from First Bank for predatory lending practices. His nephew Ricky joined him 18 months ago. The screen showed Victor's face, older than Dante remembered, with cruel eyes and a smile that never reached them. Beside him was Ricky, 24, with the dead-eyed look of someone who enjoyed causing pain. They've been running an unlicensed lending operation targeting specific demographics. Marcus pulled up a spreadsheet. Recent widows. Single mothers. Women with young children. People in crisis who don't know their rights and won't go to the police. How many victims? Dante's voice was flat, controlled. 23 families over 3 years that we can confirm. Probably more we haven't found yet. 23. The number hit Dante like a fist to the chest. Rico spread out photographs across the table. Women's faces, children's faces, families destroyed. We've identified all of them. Started making calls an hour ago. Dante picked up the first photo. Maria Gonzalez, 31, 3 children. Tell me about her. Marcus pulled up her file. Husband died in a car accident 2 years ago. Victor lent her $8,000 for funeral costs. Within 6 months, he claimed she owed $67,000. He seized her home, her car, her husband's life insurance payout, total value about $85,000. She paid the debt twice over. 3 times over, actually. And Victor still claimed she owed him money. Marcus's voice was grim. When she couldn't pay, he offered her alternative arrangements. Dante's jaw clenched. Where is she now? The silence that followed told him everything. She jumped off the Morrison Street Bridge 6 months ago, Rico said quietly. Her kids are in foster care. Separated. Dante set the photo down carefully, his hand steady despite the rage building in his chest. Next one. Jennifer Reyes. Husband killed in a gang shooting. 3 children. Borrowed $15,000. Debt ballooned to $89,000 within 8 months. Victor took everything, house, car, savings. When she still couldn't pay, Marcus stopped, his expression darkening. Say it, Dante commanded. Her children disappeared from CPS custody. All 3 of them. Vanished from the facility before they could be placed in foster care. Marcus pulled up police reports. CPS worker named Sarah Chin, no relation, filed a report saying she came in for her shift and the kids were just gone. Security footage was mysteriously corrupted. Dante's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. He sold them. We have phone records showing calls from Ricky's cell to known trafficking contacts. The Volkov brothers. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard. Eastern European ring operating out of the Port District. They specialize in, he couldn't finish. Children, Rico finished, his voice hard as stone. They specialize in children. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante stood slowly, walked to the window, his hands in his pockets because if he let them out, he'd start breaking things. How many? His voice was barely audible. We've confirmed 5 children sold to trafficking rings. Could be more. 5 children. 5 futures destroyed, 5 lives stolen, because Victor Castillo saw profit in desperation. Keep going, Dante said, still staring at the city below. I want to know about all of them. Marcus continued through the files. Each story was a variation on the same nightmare. Woman loses husband, Victor appears like a vulture, debt spirals out of control, threats escalate. Some lost their homes. Some lost their children to CPS. 2 others besides Maria had committed suicide, hung themselves, leaving notes apologizing to children they could no longer protect. By the time Marcus finished, Dante's hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Financial analysis, he said, his voice controlled but edged with fury. Marcus pulled up another spreadsheet. Victor and Ricky have collected approximately $4.3 million over 3 years. The original loans totaled $680,000. They've profited nearly $3.7 million by targeting widows and single mothers. How? Rico asked. Where's the money going? Offshore accounts, shell corporations, real estate investments. Victor's smart, he's been laundering it through legitimate businesses. Marcus highlighted several entries. He owns a car dealership, a check-cashing place, a pawn shop. All perfect for moving dirty money. And the interest rates? Dante asked. Average 20% monthly, compounding. Some as high as 30%. Over a year, That's anywhere from 800 to 2,000% annually. Marcus looked up. State usury laws cap interest at 25% per year. Every single one of these loans is illegal. Which means the debts are unenforceable, Dante said. Completely. Any lawyer would tear these contracts apart in minutes. But Victor counts on his victims not knowing that. Dante turned from the window. What about corrupt officials? Rico pulled out another folder. We've identified at least 3. Detective James Morrison takes monthly payments to ignore missing persons reports or tip Victor off to shelter locations. That's how he kept finding Elena. How much is Morrison getting? $5,000 a month. Been on Victor's payroll for 18 months. Dante's expression was murderous. Who else? Sarah Chin at CPS, the one who lost the Reyes children. She gets $3,000 monthly to facilitate removals and look the other way when kids disappear from custody. Rico's voice was tight with disgust. And Judge Peter Holloway in family court. He fast-tracks custody cases to make children vulnerable, gets Victor access to families in crisis. $10,000 per case. Jesus Christ, Marcus muttered. Dante walked back to the table, studying the web of corruption laid out before him. The trafficking connection, give me everything. Marcus pulled up phone records. Ricky's been in regular contact with the Volkov brothers for 8 months. We've traced at least 12 calls to their burner phones, plus meetings at the Port District warehouse they operate from. Do we know how many children he sold them? 5 confirmed. But the Volkovs move product fast. Those kids could be anywhere by now. Overseas probably. The word product made Dante's vision blur with rage. Children. They were talking about children being sold like merchandise. Elena Santos, he said, forcing his voice to stay level. Tell me about her case specifically. Marcus pulled up Elena's file. Husband Marco Santos borrowed $50,000 14 months ago. Died in a scaffolding collapse 6 months ago. Victor showed up 2 weeks after the funeral. What did they take from her? Marco's truck, worth $12,000. His tools, approximately $8,000. Furniture and electronics, $4,000. Plus $2,000 cash Elena paid directly. Total, $26,000. Against a $50,000 loan, Dante said. Which means she's paid half. Should have paid half, Marcus corrected. But Victor claimed she owed $73,000. Interest and fees that tripled the original debt in 6 months. Rico pulled out the loan documents they'd gotten from Elena. These papers show Marco put up his truck and their apartment deposit as collateral. But look at the signature. Dante studied it. What am I looking for? The date. This is dated 4 months before Marco's death. But the notary stamp is dated 2 weeks after his death. Understanding dawned cold and sharp. The documents are forged. Or backdated at minimum. There's no way Marco signed these specific papers with these specific terms. Marcus pulled up another screen. I compared this signature to Marco's employment records, his lease agreement, everything. The signature is close but not perfect. My guess? Victor had Marco sign blank pages, then filled in whatever terms he wanted after Marco died. Which means Elena never owed anything, Dante said slowly. The entire debt is fabricated. Not entirely. Marco probably did borrow money, maybe for the food truck business Elena mentioned. But I'd bet the original terms were much more reasonable. Maybe $20,000 at 5% interest. Victor altered the documents after Marco died, knowing Elena wouldn't know the difference. Dante felt cold fury settling over him like ice. So he didn't just exploit a widow. He defrauded her. Systematically and deliberately, yes. And the threat to her daughters? Rico pulled up a recording. We got this from Elena's phone. She didn't know it, but her phone's voice recorder was accidentally on during Victor's last visit to her motel room. He pressed play. Victor's voice came through the speaker, smooth and menacing. You can't run forever, Mrs. Santos. Eventually you'll run out of money, out of places to hide. And when you do, we're going to have a conversation about how to settle this debt. You've got 2 very pretty little girls. Blonde twins? That's premium merchandise. I know buyers who'd pay $200,000 for both. That'd cover your debt and leave you enough to start over. Think about it. The recording ended. The office was silent. Dante's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper but somehow more terrifying than if he'd shouted. He was going to sell them. Elena's daughters. He had buyers lined up. The Volkov brothers, Marcus confirmed. We found emails between Ricky and one of their contacts. They were waiting for Victor to acquire the product. His words. Dante walked slowly back to his chair and sat down. He steepled his fingers, his expression carved from marble, his eyes black with controlled rage. Tell me about Victor's personal life. Married, 2 kids, boy and a girl ages 8 and 6. Lives in Meadowbrook, nice suburban house. Wife Carol teaches elementary school. As far as she knows, Victor runs a legitimate lending business. She doesn't know what he really does. No indication she does. The kids definitely don't. Dante nodded slowly. And Ricky? Lives in a downtown apartment, single, no kids. Prior arrest for assault but nothing that stuck. He's the muscle of the operation. Handles the threats, the collection visits, the intimidation. What about assets? How much can we seize? Marcus pulled up another screen. Between Victor and Ricky, approximately $5.2 million in combined assets. The house in Meadowbrook is worth $600,000. The car dealership is worth $1.3 million. Various accounts, vehicles, property. We can liquidate most of it within 72 hours if we move fast. Do it, Dante said. I want every penny accounted for. Every widow they victimized gets full restitution. Everything they stole plus 50% damages. Boss, that's going to be over $6 million, Rico said carefully. I don't care if it's 60 million. These women deserve to be made whole. And if Victor's assets aren't enough to cover it? Dante's smile was cold. Then I'll cover the difference. But I want Victor and Ricky to lose everything. Every house, every car, every bank account. I want them to understand what it feels like to have your life stripped away. Marcus was already typing. I'll start the paperwork. We'll need to move fast. Once Victor realizes we're coming for him, he'll try to move assets offshore. He won't have time, Dante said. Because we're picking him up at dawn. Rico's status on that. Teams in position. Victor's at home in Meadowbrook. Ricky's at his apartment downtown. We've got eyes on both locations. Good. At 6 a.m. I want both of them picked up. Clean, quiet, no witnesses. Bring them to the warehouse on Pier 9. The old shipping warehouse? Yes. It's soundproofed, isolated, perfect for the conversation we're going to have. Rico nodded. And the corrupt officials? Morrison, Chin, Holloway, I want full dossiers on all of them by morning. Everything they've done, everyone they've hurt. We'll deal with them after we handle Victor and Ricky. You want to turn them over to the DA? Dante was quiet for a moment. Possibly. Depends on how cooperative they are. But first I want them to know their entire world is crumbling. I want them to feel the fear they've made others feel. Marcus closed his laptop. Boss, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Taking on Victor's entire operation, protecting Elena Santos and her kids, going to war with the Volkovs if they push back. This is a lot of exposure. I'm sure. But why? What's Elena Santos to you? You've never? Marcus stopped, seeming to realize he was overstepping. Dante stood, walked back to the window. Below, the city was starting to wake. Early morning traffic, lights flickering on in distant buildings, the sun just beginning to pale the eastern horizon. When I was 8 years old, he said quietly, I watched my mother beg loan sharks for mercy. I watched them take everything we had. I watched her break under the weight of debt she couldn't pay. He turned to face them. I built this empire on one principle: the powerful protect those who can't protect themselves. That's not charity. That's the rule. But you've never? I've never what? Gotten personally involved. Dante's voice was sharp. You're right. I usually handle things at arm's length. I make sure my territory runs clean, that people don't prey on the vulnerable. But I've never stood in a pharmacy and watched a mother count $10 while her daughters were dying. I've never seen that moment, that exact moment, when desperation turns into despair. He walked back to the table, placed his hands flat on the surface. Elena Santos could have been my mother. Maya and Sophia could have been me and Isabella. And this time, this one time, I have the power to stop it. To make sure they don't suffer the way my family suffered. Rico and Marcus exchanged glances. So yes, Dante continued, I'm sure. Victor Castillo made the mistake of operating in my territory, using my name and threatening children. He's going to learn what happens when you break my rules. What about Elena? Rico asked. What's the long-term plan? Safe housing, medical care, financial support until she can get back on her feet. And protection, permanent protection. Victor and Ricky won't be a problem after today, but I want her to feel safe. Her daughters need to feel safe. Boss, Marcus said carefully, people are going to talk. They're going to wonder why you're protecting a widow and her kids. They're going to speculate about your relationship with her. Let them talk. Dante's voice was final. Anyone who has a problem with it can come tell me directly. But Elena Santos and her daughters are under my protection now. That's not negotiable. The office fell silent. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Dante checked his watch. It's almost 6. Rico, give the order. Bring them in. Rico pulled out his phone and sent a text. Less than 30 seconds later, his phone buzzed with a response. Teams are moving. ETA on both targets, 15 minutes. Good. Marcus, I want you to compile everything we have into a presentation. Every victim, every dollar stolen, every crime committed. I want Victor to see exactly what he's done. And then what? Dante's smile was terrifying in its coldness. And then we have a conversation about consequences. He walked to the window one last time, watching the sun rise over the city he controlled. Somewhere in a hospital across town, Elena Santos was probably sitting beside her daughter's beds, watching them sleep peacefully for the first time in days. She'd been terrified last night, broken and desperate, certain she was out of options. By tonight she'd be safe. Really safe. Not because she'd begged for mercy or made some deal with the devil, but because Dante Moretti had decided that widows and children in his city would be protected. Victor Castillo had forgotten that power came with rules. That even in the criminal underworld there were lines you didn't cross. He'd crossed every single one. And now, as the sun rose on what would be his last day of freedom, Victor Castillo was about to learn the most important lesson of all. When you prey on the powerless, eventually someone more powerful than you will notice. And Dante Moretti had noticed. Dante's phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Girls are awake. Asking for their mother. Fever's down to 99. Dr. Reeves says they can be discharged tomorrow if they continue improving. He allowed himself a small smile. At least something was going right. Let's go, he said to Rico. I want to be at the warehouse when they arrive. I want Victor to see my face and understand that his world just ended. They left the office together, leaving behind the files and photos and evidence of 3 years of systematic cruelty. By tonight it would all be over. Victor's operation would be dismantled, his assets seized, his victims compensated. And Elena Santos would sleep safely for the first time in 6 months. It wasn't redemption for Dante's mother or sister. Nothing could bring them back. But it was something. It was the promise he'd made on his mother's grave, finally fulfilled. The powerful protecting the powerless. Just like it should have been all along. The warehouse on Pier 9 smelled like salt water and rust. Dante stood in the center of the vast empty space, hands in his pockets, watching the first rays of sunlight filter through the grimy windows high above. The building had been abandoned for years, officially. Unofficially, it served purposes like this. Conversations that needed privacy. Lessons that needed to be taught away from prying eyes. 2 metal chairs sat bolted to the concrete floor, positioned under a single overhead light. The rest of the warehouse remained in shadow, deliberately. Dante wanted Victor and Ricky to feel the darkness pressing in, wanted them to understand how small they'd become. Rico's phone buzzed. They're 2 minutes out. Dante nodded. 6 of his men stood positioned around the perimeter, silent, watchful, absolutely loyal. They'd seen him angry before, but this was different. This was cold, calculated fury that had been building since he'd watched Elena count $10 with shaking hands. The heavy metal door scraped open. 2 black vans pulled in, and Dante's men emerged with their cargo. Victor and Ricky, hooded, hands zip-tied behind their backs, stumbling as they were guided across the concrete. Victor was making noise even through the hood, muffled protests, threats. Ricky stayed silent, but Dante could see the tension in his body. Good. Fear was a useful teacher. They were pushed into the chairs and the hoods came off. Victor blinked in the harsh light, disoriented. When his eyes adjusted and he saw Dante standing 10 feet away, his face went pale. Mr. Moretti, there's been some mistake. I can explain. Can you? Dante's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Somehow that made it more terrifying. Please explain to me how there's been a mistake. Victor's eyes darted around the warehouse, taking in the men, the isolation, the concrete floor that could be hosed clean. Sir, I don't know what you've heard, but I run a legitimate lending business. If someone's been spreading lies. Legitimate. Dante let the word hang in the air. That's an interesting choice of words, Victor. Let's talk about what's legitimate. He walked slowly to a table that had been set up just beyond the light's reach. Marcus's files were spread across it. 3 years of documentation, all neatly organized. You've been operating in my territory for 3 years? Dante said, picking up the first folder. Running an unlicensed lending operation. I was aware of that. What I wasn't aware of was who you were targeting. Victor's eyes tracked Dante's movements. I don't know what. Maria Gonzalez. Dante opened the folder, showed Victor the photo. 31 years old. Husband died in a car accident. 3 children. You lent her $8,000 for funeral costs. Victor's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Within 6 months, you claimed she owed $67,000. You seized her home, her car, her husband's life insurance payout, total value about $85,000. Dante's voice remained perfectly calm. But you told her she still owed money. Strange math, Victor. She paid you more than 10 times what she borrowed, and you said it wasn't enough. Ricky finally spoke, his voice cocky despite the situation. Business is business, right? Interest, fees, it adds up. Dante's hand moved faster than thought. He backhanded Ricky across the face with enough force to snap the younger man's head sideways. Blood sprayed from Ricky's split lip. I didn't ask you to speak. Dante's voice never rose above conversational volume. When I want your input, I'll request it. Until then, you sit there and you listen. Understood. Ricky's eyes watered from pain, but he nodded. Dante returned his attention to Victor. Maria Gonzalez jumped off the Morrison Street Bridge 6 months ago. Killed herself rather than become what you wanted her to become. Her children are in foster care now, separated, traumatized. You did that. He set down that folder and picked up another. Jennifer Reyes. Husband killed in gang shooting. 3 kids. You lent her $15,000. Claimed she owed $89,000 within 8 months. Victor was shaking now. Mr. Moretti, please, I can make this right. I can repay. Her children disappeared from CPS custody. Dante spoke over Victor's protests. 3 kids, ages 7, 5, and 3, vanished from a supposedly secure facility. Security footage was corrupted. The caseworker on duty claimed she didn't know what happened. But we know, don't we, Victor? He moved closer, his shadow falling over Victor's chair. We have phone records. Calls from Ricky's cell to the Volkov brothers. We have emails discussing product acquisition. We know you sold those children to a trafficking ring. 3 kids. Gone. Probably overseas by now, being used in ways I won't even speak aloud. Victor's face had gone from pale to gray. I didn't, that was Ricky, I never authorized. Don't? Dante's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. Don't you dare try to distance yourself from what your nephew did on your orders. You're the one who identified the targets. You're the one who created the impossible debts. You're the one who made the threats. Ricky was just your attack dog. He walked back to the table, his movements deliberate, giving Victor time to understand how thoroughly trapped he was. Would you like to know how many families you've destroyed? Dante didn't wait for an answer. 23. Over 3 years. 23 widows or single mothers with young children. You collected $4.3 million on original loans totaling $680,000. That's a profit of $3.7 million, Victor. Built on the backs of grieving women who didn't know their rights. It's just business, Victor whispered. Just business. No. Dante turned, his eyes black with fury. Business has rules. Even illegal business has rules. And you broke every single one. He picked up another folder, this one noticeably thicker. Elena Santos. Let's talk about her, shall we? Victor's eyes widened with recognition. Her husband Marco borrowed $50,000 for a food truck business. He died in a scaffolding collapse 6 months ago. You showed up 2 weeks after his funeral. Dante opened the folder, showed Victor the loan documents. These papers claim Marco signed them 4 months before his death. But the notary stamp is dated 2 weeks after his death. Want to explain that? Silence. No? Let me explain it for you. You had Marco sign blank pages, standard practice for criminals who want flexibility. After he died, you filled in whatever terms you wanted. You created a debt that didn't exist. You forged documents. You defrauded a widow. Dante set the papers down. You took Marco's truck, $12,000. His tools, $8,000. Furniture and belongings, $4,000. Plus $2,000 cash. That's $26,000 against a $50,000 loan. She'd paid more than half. But you claimed she owed $73,000. Interest rates. 20% monthly. Compounding. Dante's voice was deadly quiet. That's 791% annually, Victor. State usury laws cap interest at 25% per year. Your loans are illegal. Every single contract you have is unenforceable. Any lawyer would tear them apart in 5 minutes. But you counted on your victims not knowing that, didn't you? Victor said nothing, his hands trembling. And then, Dante leaned against the table, his posture deceptively casual. When Elena couldn't pay your fabricated debt, you looked at her 5-year-old daughters and told her there were other ways to settle accounts. You told her you knew people who'd pay $200,000 for blonde twins. The warehouse went absolutely silent. Even the men positioned around the perimeter seemed to stop breathing. We have recordings, Victor. Dante pulled out his phone, played the audio. Victor's voice filled the warehouse, smooth and menacing, describing Elena's daughters as premium merchandise. When it ended, Dante pocketed the phone. You were going to sell them. 2 little girls. 5 years old. You had buyers lined up, the same Volkov brothers you'd sold children to before. You were 1 week away from taking them. I wouldn't have actually, Victor started. Yes, you would have. Dante pushed off from the table. Because you've done it before. 5 times that we can confirm. 5 children sold to traffickers because their mothers couldn't pay debts you'd artificially inflated. And you were about to make it 7. Ricky, blood still running from his split lip, tried again. Look man, it's just. This time Rico moved. 1 punch to Ricky's solar plexus, precise, brutal. Ricky doubled over, gasping for air. I believe Mr. Moretti told you not to speak, Rico said mildly. Dante walked slowly around Victor's chair, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Here's what's interesting, Victor. You've been telling your victims that you work for me. That the debts are sanctioned by the Moretti organization. You've been using my name to terrorize widows and children. Victor's voice was barely a whisper. I thought it added legitimacy. Made collections easier. You used my reputation to prey on the vulnerable. You made people think I condone what you do. Dante stopped directly in front of Victor. I don't prey on widows. I don't terrorize children. I don't traffic in human beings. But you made people think I did. You made Elena Santos terrified of me because she thought I was behind the men who wanted to sell her daughters. I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti. I didn't mean any disrespect. I don't care about disrespect. Dante crouched down to Victor's eye level. I care that you broke my one rule. The only rule that matters. Children are untouchable. Victor's breath came in short, panicked gasps. So here's what's going to happen. Dante stood. You're going to tell me everything. Every family you've targeted. Every dollar you've stolen. Every corrupt official on your payroll. Every trafficking contact you have. Everything. And if I don't? Dante's smile was terrible. Then I deliver you to the families of the children you sold. The Reyes family, for instance. Jennifer's brothers are currently serving time in Stateville for murder. I'll make sure they know exactly what you did to their sister's kids. I'll even provide transportation. Victor's face went white. Please. Please, I'll tell you everything. Just don't. Then start talking. For the next 2 hours, Victor confessed. Every crime, every victim, every connection. Marcus stood at the table with his laptop, recording everything, cross-referencing it with the data they'd already compiled. Victor named names: Detective Morrison, CPS worker Sarah Chin, Judge Holloway, 3 other cops on his payroll, 2 lawyers who'd helped forge documents. The web of corruption was even wider than Dante had thought. Ricky, given permission to speak, added details about the trafficking contacts. The Volkov brothers operated out of a warehouse on Pier 15. They had connections to Eastern European syndicates, Middle Eastern buyers, domestic operations in 3 other states. They moved product, Ricky's word, which made Dante's jaw clench, within 72 hours of acquisition. Fast enough that families couldn't track them, authorities couldn't intervene. When they finished, dawn had fully broken outside. Light streamed through the high windows, illuminating the concrete floor, the metal chairs, 2 men who'd just confessed to years of systematic cruelty. Dante walked back to the table, reviewed Marcus's notes. 23 families. 5 children sold. 2 women dead by suicide. Approximately $4.3 million stolen. Corruption spanning police, CPS, and the court system. He looked up at Victor and Ricky. Here's your sentence. Victor's eyes were desperate, hopeful. He thought there might be mercy. There wasn't. You're going to liquidate every asset you own. The house in Meadowbrook, the car dealership, the pawn shop, every bank account, every vehicle, every piece of property. All of it. Marcus will handle the transfers. But my family, my wife and kids, they'll have nothing. Your wife will receive $50,000, enough to start over, to file for divorce, To make sure your children don't suffer for your crimes. That's 50,000 more than you gave Elena Santos's children. Dante's voice was ice. As for you? You'll have exactly what you left your victims with. Nothing. And then what? Victor's voice broke. You're going to kill us? No. Dante's smile was cold. You're going to live. You're going to repay every widow you stole from, full restitution plus 50% damages. That's going to take the rest of your lives working whatever jobs you can find. And you're going to live with the knowledge of what you did. The children you sold. The women who killed themselves. The families you destroyed. Where are we supposed to go? Anywhere but here. You have 12 hours to leave my city. If I ever see you again, if I ever hear your names in connection with this city, you'll discover that my mercy has limits. He turned to Rico. Get them out of here. Make sure they understand the terms. And Rico? Have someone escort them out of state. I want confirmation they've crossed the border by tonight. Rico nodded, and two of Dante's men hauled Victor and Ricky to their feet. Wait, Victor said desperately. The Volkovs, they're not going to like this. They'll think we talked, they'll come after us. That's not my problem, Dante said. You made deals with traffickers. Live with the consequences. Please, you have to protect us. Dante turned, his eyes black with contempt. I protect widows and children. I protect people who can't protect themselves. I don't protect men who sell children to traffickers. You're on your own, Victor. Just like you left your victims on their own. They were dragged away, Victor still protesting, Ricky silent and defeated. The warehouse door slammed shut, and suddenly the vast space felt quieter, cleaner somehow. Marcus closed his laptop. I'll start processing the asset transfers immediately. Should have funds available to distribute to victims within 48 hours. Good. Dante pulled out his phone, checked messages. One from Dr. Reeves. Both girls responding well to treatment. Elena is resting. All three should be discharged tomorrow afternoon. He allowed himself to breathe for the first time since entering the warehouse. What about the corrupt officials? Rico asked. Compile everything Victor gave us. Every payment, every favor, every crime. Then deliver it to DA Reynolds. The real DA, not the one on Victor's payroll. Reynolds is going to have questions about how we got this information. Tell him an anonymous source. Tell him whatever he needs to hear. But make sure those cops, that CPS worker, that judge, all of them face consequences. Rico nodded. And the Volkovs? Dante was silent for a moment. The Volkov brothers were a different kind of problem. True predators, deeply connected, dangerous. Taking them on meant war. But they'd bought children from Victor Castillo. They'd profited from the suffering of families like Elena's. We'll deal with them, Dante said quietly. But not today. Today is about making sure Elena and her daughters are safe. Everything else can wait. He walked toward the door, then paused. Rico? I want protection on Elena increased. 24/7. The Volkovs might not know about her yet, but I don't want to take chances. And I want surveillance on Victor and Ricky until they're out of state. Make sure they're actually leaving. Already arranged, boss. Outside, the morning sun was bright and clean. Dante stood on the pier, looking out at the water, thinking about the night he'd stood in a pharmacy and watched a mother choose between impossible options. 24 hours ago, Elena Santos had been desperate, terrified, certain her daughters were going to die. Now Victor and Ricky were fleeing the city with nothing. 23 families would receive restitution. Corrupt officials would face justice. And Elena could finally stop running. Dante pulled out his phone and sent a text. It's done. You're safe. I'm coming to the hospital this afternoon. We need to talk about what happens next. A moment later, his phone buzzed with a reply. Thank you. The girls are asking about you. They want to show you their drawings from the nurses. Something in Dante's chest loosened, a tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. Two little girls wanted to show him their drawings. Two little girls who, 24 hours ago, had been dying. He'd spent 20 years building an empire on vengeance and fear. But this felt like something else entirely. This felt like redemption. Not for his mother or sister. Nothing could bring them back. But maybe this was what his mother would have wanted. For him to use his power to protect instead of destroy. To save families instead of letting them break the way his had broken. Boss? Rico stood beside him. You okay? Yeah. Dante pocketed his phone. I'm good. Let's go to the hospital. I promised some little girls I'd look at their artwork. Rico smiled, a rare expression. Never thought I'd see the day Dante Moretti worried about finger paintings. Neither did I. Dante started walking toward the car. But here we are. Behind them, the warehouse stood empty except for 2 metal chairs and the ghost of Victor Castillo's empire. Ahead, a hospital where a family was healing. And for the first time in 20 years, Dante Moretti felt like maybe, just maybe, his power was worth something after all. The hospital room was filled with afternoon sunlight when Dante arrived. He paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. Elena curled in a chair between the 2 beds, one hand holding Maya's, the other holding Sophia's. All 3 were sleeping, their faces peaceful in a way that made his chest tighten. Dr. Reeves appeared beside him. She hasn't left their side since you brought them in. We tried to get her to rest in a proper bed, but she refused. How are they? The girls are responding beautifully. Fevers are gone, lungs are clear, hydration levels are back to normal. If they continue improving overnight, I'll discharge them tomorrow afternoon. Dr. Reeves glanced at Elena. But I'm more worried about her. She's severely malnourished, dehydrated, exhausted. Her body's been running on fumes for months. Will she be okay? Physically? Yes, with proper nutrition and rest. Emotionally? Dr. Reeves shook his head. That kind of trauma doesn't heal quickly. She's been in survival mode for 6 months. It'll take time for her nervous system to understand she's actually safe now. Dante nodded slowly. Thank you. For everything. Just doing my job. Dr. Reeves smiled slightly. Though I have to say, in 15 years of knowing you, I've never seen you this invested in a patient's welfare. Things change. Apparently. The doctor squeezed Dante's shoulder. She's lucky you were in that pharmacy. Those girls are lucky. After Dr. Reeves left, Dante stood in the doorway for another moment, watching Elena sleep. Even in rest, tension lined her face, her brow furrowed, her jaw tight, her hands gripping her daughter's hands like she was afraid they'd disappear if she let go. He understood that fear. He'd lived it. A small voice broke the silence. Mr. Moretti? Maya was awake, blinking sleepily at him. Her face had color now, no longer flushed with fever. She looked like a normal 5-year-old instead of a child fighting for her life. Hi, Maya. Dante stepped into the room quietly. How are you feeling? Better. My throat doesn't hurt anymore. She glanced at her mother. Mama's really tired. She won't sleep in a real bed. The nurses tried to make her, but she said she has to stay with us. Your mama loves you very much. I know. Maya studied him with the unnerving directness of children. Are you going to keep us safe? Like you promised? The question hit him harder than he expected. Yes. I promised and I keep my promises. From the bad men? The ones who made Mama cry. Dante crouched beside her bed so they were eye level. The bad men are gone, Maya. They won't ever hurt you or your mama again. I made sure of it. How? How did you explain to a 5-year-old that you'd just destroyed 2 men's lives? That you'd stripped them of everything and exiled them from the city? That you'd made them understand the consequences of threatening children? I had a conversation with them, Dante said carefully. A very serious conversation. And they understood that hurting you and your sister and your mama was wrong. They won't do it again. Maya considered this. Did you punch them? Rico punched that other bad man in the pharmacy. Despite everything, Dante felt a smile tug at his lips. I didn't have to punch them. Sometimes words are scarier than punches. Mama says we should use our words instead of hitting. Your mama is very wise. Sophia stirred in the other bed, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw Dante, she smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed her small face. The angel man came back. Elena woke with a start, her grip tightening on both girls' hands before she registered where she was. Her eyes found Dante and something complicated crossed her face. Relief, gratitude, uncertainty, maybe fear. I didn't mean to wake you, Dante said. It's okay. Elena sat up, trying to smooth her hair, self-conscious. I was just resting. Which you should be doing. He gestured to the chair. Dr. Reeves says you haven't slept in a proper bed since you got here. I can't leave them. What if they need me? What if something happens? Mama, Sophia said gently, we're okay. The nurse said we're all better now. You need to rest too, Maya added. You look tired. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I'm fine, babies. I just need to. Elena. Dante's voice was firm but gentle. The girls are right. You need to rest properly. There's a private room next door. You can leave the doors open so you can hear them, but you need to sleep in an actual bed. I can't. You can. And you will. Because your daughters need you healthy and functional, not collapsing from exhaustion. Elena looked between her daughters and Dante, clearly torn. Finally she nodded. Okay. But only if. Doors stay open, Dante confirmed. And I'll stay here with them while you sleep. I promise nothing will happen. You don't have to. I want to. He pulled a chair closer to the beds. Besides, the girls promised to show me their drawings. And I'm very interested in seeing their artwork. Sophia's face lit up. The nurses gave us coloring books. And crayons. So many colors. I'd love to see them. Elena stood slowly, her body stiff from hours in the chair. Dante watched her walk to the adjoining room, saw how she paused at the door to look back at her daughters one more time before finally, reluctantly, disappearing inside. Mama's scared, Maya said quietly once Elena was gone. I know. She tries to hide it, but we can tell. Maya picked at the hospital blanket. She's scared all the time. Even when she smiles. Dante's chest tightened. She's been protecting you. Keeping you safe. That's very scary work. But you said the bad men are gone, Sophia said. So Mama doesn't have to be scared anymore, right? Right. But sometimes fear doesn't go away immediately. Your Mama's been afraid for so long that it might take time for her to understand she's safe now. Will you help her? Maya asked. Help her not be scared? I'll try. Sophia reached under her pillow and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I made this for you. In case you came back. Dante unfolded it carefully. It was a crayon drawing, stick figures in front of a building. 3 small figures labeled Maya, Sophia, and Mama, and 1 tall figure in black labeled Angel Man. The sky was full of stars and everyone was smiling. This is beautiful, Sophia. That's you. She pointed to the tall figure. You saved us. Angels save people, so you're an angel. I'm not an angel, sweetheart. I'm just a man who wants to help. Angels are just people who help when no one else can, Maya said matter-of-factly. That's what Mama told us once. So you're an angel. Dante didn't know what to say. He carefully folded the drawing and put it in his pocket. Thank you. I'll keep this somewhere safe. For the next hour he sat with the twins, looking at their coloring book pictures, listening to them chatter about the nice nurses and the good food and how much better they felt. They were resilient in the way children could be, bouncing back from crisis with remarkable speed once the immediate danger passed. But every few minutes, one of them would glance toward the door to make sure their mother was still there. The trauma hadn't disappeared. It would take time. Eventually both girls started yawning. We're supposed to take a nap, Maya said. The nurses said rest helps us get better. Then you should rest. Will you still be here when we wake up? Sophia asked, her voice small. I'll be right here. I promise. And Mama? She's right next door. I'll wake her if you need her. Satisfied, both girls settled into their pillows. Within minutes, their breathing had evened out into sleep. Dante sat in the quiet room watching 2 little girls who'd come so close to dying. 2 little girls who'd called him an angel and drawn him into their family picture. 2 little girls who reminded him so much of Isabella it physically hurt. His phone buzzed. A text from Rico. Victor and Ricky crossed the state line 2 hours ago. Confirmed via GPS on the car we provided. They're gone. Another text from Marcus. Asset liquidation in progress. Should have full amount available for distribution by Monday. Also compiled evidence for DA Reynolds. Messengered it to his office an hour ago. And one more from Rico. DA Reynolds called. Wants to meet with you. Says he has questions but appreciates the information. Judge Holloway was arrested an hour ago. Detective Morrison is being investigated. CPS worker Sarah Chen has disappeared. Probably ran when she heard Holloway got picked up. Dante responded, good. Keep pressure on. I want all of them to answer for what they did. Enrico, find Sarah Chen. She doesn't get to run from this. He pocketed his phone and walked to the adjoining room. Elena was asleep on the bed, still fully clothed, lying on top of the covers like she might need to jump up at any moment. Even in sleep, she looked ready to run. Dante found a blanket and draped it over her gently. She stirred but didn't wake. Back in the twins' room, he settled into the chair to wait. This was unfamiliar territory, sitting in a hospital room watching over sleeping children, feeling protective of people who weren't part of his organization. He'd spent 20 years building walls around himself, maintaining distance, never letting anyone get close enough to matter. But these 3, Elena and her daughters, had somehow breached those walls in less than 24 hours. Maybe because they reminded him of what he'd lost. Maybe because helping them felt like saving the family he couldn't save 20 years ago. Maybe because for the first time since his mother's death, He felt like his power was being used for something that actually mattered. Mr. Moretti? Elena stood in the doorway, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. How long was I asleep? He checked his watch. About 2 hours. I should have checked on them sooner. They're fine. We colored for a while, then they took a nap. Just like the nurses ordered. Elena walked to her daughter's beds, checking them with a mother's thoroughness. Foreheads for fever, breathing for any labored sounds, hands to make sure they were warm enough. Finally satisfied, she sank into the chair beside Dante. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved their lives. You saved my life. Her voice broke. You made the bad men go away. I don't know how, and maybe I don't want to know, but I know they're gone. I can feel it. For the first time in 6 months, I don't feel like I'm being hunted. Dante pulled out his phone, showed her a photo Marcus had sent, Victor and Ricky's car crossing the state border. They're gone. They left the city this morning and won't be coming back. Ever. Elena stared at the photo, tears streaming down her face. What did you do? I had a conversation with them about their business practices. They understood that operating in my territory without permission, using my name to terrorize people and threatening children was unacceptable. They agreed to leave. Just like that. Just like that. He didn't tell her about the warehouse, the confessions, the systematic destruction of everything Victor had built. She didn't need to know those details. They also agreed to repay every family they victimized. You'll receive $35,000, the difference between what Marco actually borrowed and what they stole from you. Plus compensation for what you've suffered. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. $35,000? I can't, that's too much. It's not enough. Nothing could ever be enough to compensate for what you've been through. But it's a start. It means you can get back on your feet, find a real apartment, buy proper clothes for the girls, start building a life again. I don't understand why you're doing this. You don't know us. We're nothing to you. Dante was quiet for a long moment, watching the twins sleep. When I was 8 years old, I watched my mother beg for money to buy medicine for my sister. The pharmacist said no. Said she needed to pay in full or get nothing. My sister almost died. Elena's breath caught. My mother never recovered from that. From feeling helpless, from not being able to protect her children. It broke something in her. His voice was rough. When I saw you in that pharmacy, counting that $10 with your daughters dying beside you, I saw my mother. And I couldn't? He stopped, composed himself. I couldn't let it happen again. Not when I had the power to stop it. So you saved us to save your mother? Maybe. Or maybe I saved you because it's what she would have wanted me to do. Use my power to protect instead of destroy. He looked at Elena directly. But whatever the reason, you and your daughters are under my protection now. That's not temporary, Elena. That's permanent. What does that mean? Protection? It means you'll never have to run again. Never have to count change and wonder if it's enough. Never have to choose between impossible options. His voice was firm. It means I'm going to make sure you and your daughters have stability, safety, and the chance to build a real life. But why? What do you want from us? Nothing. I want nothing from you except to know that you're safe. That those girls get to grow up without fear. That you get to be a mother without constantly looking over your shoulder. Elena wiped tears from her face. I don't know how to accept this. I've spent 6 months learning that there's no such thing as help without strings attached. There are no strings, Elena. This isn't a debt. This isn't something you'll owe me for. This is just, he searched for the right word, restoration. Victor and Ricky took your life from you. I'm giving it back. She was silent for a long time, staring at her daughters. Finally, she asked, what happens when they're discharged tomorrow? You'll come to an apartment I've arranged. It's in a safe neighborhood, fully furnished, first 6 months paid. After that, we'll help you find work so you can start paying rent yourself. My organization has resources. Connections. We can help you find a legitimate job, nothing illegal, nothing dangerous. Just a regular job that pays enough to support your family. Elena laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. A regular job. I haven't had anything regular in so long I've forgotten what it feels like. You'll remember. Dante stood, preparing to leave. Get some rest, Elena. Tomorrow starts a new chapter. A better one. Dante. She waited until he turned back. Your mother would be proud of you. Of what you did for us. His throat tightened. I hope so. God, I hope so. He left the room but paused in the hallway to pull out Sophia's drawing. 3 stick figures and an angel in black. A family held together by someone who'd learned too late that power without purpose was just destruction. But power with purpose? That could save lives. That could break cycles. That could make 20 years of darkness mean something. Rico appeared beside him. Everything okay, boss? Yeah. Dante pocketed the drawing. Everything's okay. For the first time in a long time, everything's actually okay. They walked down the hospital corridor together, leaving behind a family that was healing. A family that would wake up tomorrow to safety they'd almost forgotten existed. A family that had called a dangerous man an angel. And maybe, just maybe, they were right. The apartment building looked like something out of a dream Elena had long stopped having. Tree-lined street, children playing on the sidewalk, mothers pushing strollers without that hunted look Elena had worn for 6 months. Everything about the Riverside district screamed stability, safety, normal, words that had become foreign to her vocabulary. Dante's driver, Marcus, pulled up to the curb in front of a well-maintained brick building. Elena sat in the back seat with Maya and Sophia pressed against her sides, all three of them staring out the window like they'd landed on an alien planet. "This can't be right," Elena whispered. "This is too nice. We can't afford." "You're not paying for it. Not yet." Marcus turned in his seat, his expression kind. Mr. Moretti was very specific. Safe neighborhood, good schools, stable community. This building meets all those criteria. Sophia's nose was pressed against the window. "Mama, there are kids playing. Real kids. Can we play with them?" Maya asked, hope brightening her voice. Elena's throat tightened. When was the last time her daughters had played with other children? Months. Too many months. "Maybe," she managed. "Let's see the apartment first." Marcus helped them out of the car, carrying their single duffel bag, everything they owned in the world. Elena felt the weight of that as they walked toward the building entrance. 6 months ago they'd had furniture, clothes, toys, a life. Now they had one bag in the charity of a dangerous man. The lobby was clean and bright, with mailboxes lining one wall and a bulletin board covered in community notices. A woman in her 60s stood waiting, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her smile warm and genuine. "Mrs. Santos. I'm Mrs. Chin, the building manager." She approached with her hand extended. Mr. Moretti called ahead. "Your apartment is ready." Elena shook her hand, thrown by the normalcy of the gesture. "Thank you. We appreciate this." Mrs. Chen's eyes softened as she looked at the twins. "And you must be Maya and Sophia. I've put some welcome treats in your apartment. I hope you like cookies." Both girls' eyes went wide. Elena felt tears pricking at her eyes. Cookies. Such a small, ordinary thing. When was the last time her daughters had cookies? They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The girls pressed against Elena, still uncertain in this new environment. Mrs. Chin chattered pleasantly about the building, the neighbors, the nearby park. Elena tried to listen, tried to absorb it all, but her mind was spinning. This is temporary, she told herself. It has to be temporary. You can't depend on this. You can't let yourself believe this is real. But when Mrs. Chin opened the door to apartment 3C, reality shifted anyway. The living room was flooded with afternoon sunlight from large windows. A comfortable gray couch faced a modest TV. Bookshelves lined one wall, already stocked with books. The kitchen was small but functional, and through an open doorway Elena could see bunk beds. Sophia shrieked, breaking free from Elena's hand and running toward the bedroom. Maya followed, their earlier caution forgotten in the excitement of discovery. Elena stood frozen in the entryway, unable to process what she was seeing. This wasn't just an apartment. This was a home. Furnished, warm, lived in. "The kitchen is fully stocked," Mrs. Chin said gently. "Refrigerator, pantry, everything." Mr. Moretti was very thorough in his instructions. Elena walked slowly into the living room. On the coffee table sat a manila envelope with her name on it. Beside it, a vase of fresh flowers, simple daisies, nothing extravagant but bright and alive. "The girl's bedroom is through there," Mrs. Chin continued, gesturing. "Your bedroom is on the other side of the living room. Both bathrooms are stocked with toiletries, towels, everything you might need." "This is too much." Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "I can't accept all this. Mr. Moretti doesn't do anything halfway." Mrs. Chen's smile was knowing. "He's been our landlord for 15 years. Takes care of his tenants. You and your girls are in good hands." From the bedroom came excited squeals. "Mama, come look. There are toys. And books. And our beds have princess covers." Elena excused herself and walked to the doorway of the girls' room. Pink bunk beds dominated the space just like Mrs. Chen had said, but it was everything else that made Elena's knees weak. A toy chest overflowing with dolls and stuffed animals. Art supplies neatly organized on a small desk. Books, so many books, lining a low shelf where small hands could reach them. Maya and Sophia were pulling toys out of the chest, their faces glowing with joy Elena hadn't seen in half a year. "Can we keep them, Mama?" Sophia asked, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Are they really ours?" Elena couldn't form words around the lump in her throat. "Yes, baby. They're yours." She retreated to the living room before her daughters could see her crying. Mrs. Chin tactfully gave her a moment, busying herself with explaining the thermostat. "There's also a security panel by the door," Mrs. Chin said when Elena had composed herself. "It's connected directly to Mr. Moretti's security network. If you ever feel unsafe, you press that button and someone will be here in under 3 minutes." Elena stared at the small panel. "He's watching us?" "He's protecting you," Mrs. Chin corrected gently. "There's a difference. No cameras in the apartment, your privacy is yours. But the building entrance and parking lot are monitored. Mr. Moretti takes care of his people." "I'm not his people. I don't even know him." Mrs. Chin's expression was kind but firm. "You're now. And that's not a bad thing, Mrs. Santos. Dante Moretti has his reputation, but the people he protects? They're truly safe. You don't need to be afraid anymore." After Mrs. Chin left with instructions to call if they needed anything, Elena stood in the middle of her new living room, listening to her daughters play in their new bedroom, and finally allowed herself to break down completely. 6 months. 6 months of terror and hunger and constant motion. 6 months of watching her daughters learn what fear tasted like. 6 months of believing there was no way out, no hope, no future beyond survival. And now this. Safety. Stability. A home. She sank onto the couch and picked up the envelope with her name on it. Inside were keys, apartment documents showing the first 6 months were paid, and a handwritten note. "Elena, this is not charity. This is restoration. Victor Castillo took your home from you. I'm giving it back. The apartment is yours for as long as you need it. First 6 months are covered. After that, we'll help you find work so you can start paying rent yourself and building independence. The girls' room is stocked because children deserve toys and books and the chance to be children. Your closet has basic clothing in your size. Nothing fancy, just the essentials to get you started. There's also $2,000 cash in the kitchen drawer by the stove. For groceries, for anything you need while you're settling in. Not a loan. Not something you'll owe back. Just resources to help you find your footing. My number is programmed into the phone on the counter. Call if you need anything. Day or night. I meant what I said. You and your daughters are under my protection. That doesn't end when you leave the hospital. That's permanent. Welcome home. Dante." Elena read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. The casual way he wrote "welcome home," like it was that simple. Like 6 months of homelessness could be erased with an apartment and some furniture and a promise of safety. Except, somehow, it was working. Somehow, sitting in this sunlit living room with her daughters laughing in the next room, Elena felt something she hadn't felt since Marco died. "Oh, Mama?" Maya appeared in the doorway. "Can we really stay here? This is really our home." Elena opened her arms and both girls ran to her, climbing onto the couch, pressing against her sides like they always did. She held them close, breathing in the smell of the hospital shampoo in their hair, feeling their solid weight against her. "Yes, babies. This is our home. For real. Forever?" Sophia asked. Elena thought about the note, about Dante's promise of permanence. "For as long as we need it." "I like it here," Maya said. "It smells nice. And the beds are soft. And there are toys. And cookies," Sophia added. Mrs. Chin said there are cookies. Elena laughed, a real laugh that surprised her with its lightness. "Then let's find those cookies." The kitchen was indeed fully stocked. Fresh fruit in a bowl on the counter. Bread in the bread box. Milk and eggs and cheese in the refrigerator. Pasta and sauce and canned goods in the pantry. On the top shelf of the pantry, a tin of homemade cookies with a note. "Welcome to the building. Mrs. Chin." They sat at the small dining table, a real table, not a motel bed, and ate cookies and milk like it was a feast. The girls chattered about their room, about which bunk they wanted, about the toys they'd discovered. Elena watched them, really watched them, and saw color in their cheeks that had been absent for months. Saw the way they smiled without fear lurking behind it. Saw them being children again instead of tiny refugees. After cookies, she explored the apartment more thoroughly. Her bedroom was simple but comfortable. A double bed with clean linens, a dresser, a closet. Inside the closet hung clothes in her size: jeans, t-shirts, a few simple dresses, a warm jacket, shoes. Nothing extravagant, but everything she needed. In the bathroom she found new toothbrushes still in packages, shampoo and soap, a first aid kit. Everything labeled and organized like someone had made a checklist of what a family might need and systematically provided it all. The kitchen drawer by the stove held exactly what Dante's note had promised: $2,000 in cash, neatly banded. Elena stared at it, her hands shaking. $2,000. More money than she'd held at once in months. Money that wasn't spoken for, wasn't immediately needed for survival. Just resources to help her build a life again. Her phone, the cheap prepaid phone she'd been using, sat on the counter, but beside it was a new smartphone. She turned it on and found a single contact already programmed: Dante Moretti, with a local number. As if sensing her thoughts, the phone rang. Dante's name lit up the screen. Elena answered with trembling hands. "Hello? Elena. You made it to the apartment?" His voice was warm, concerned. "Yes, we're here. Dante, it's too much. The furniture, the clothes, the toys for the girls. It's exactly enough. Nothing more than you deserve after what you've been through. But I can't possibly repay." "Elena." His voice was firm. "Stop. This isn't debt. You don't owe me anything. This is me making sure you and your daughters have what you need to start over. That's all." She sank onto the couch, overcome. "I don't know how to accept this much help. I've been on my own for so long." "You're not on your own anymore. That's the point." He paused. "How are the girls doing?" "They're playing with toys. Real toys. They're laughing, Dante. When was the last time I heard them laugh like this?" Her voice broke. 6 months. It's been 6 months since they sounded like children instead of frightened animals. "Then the apartment is worth it." His voice was quiet. "Elena, I'm going to be honest with you about something. I don't do this. I don't get personally involved. I don't open my home, my properties, to people I've just met. But you and your daughters—" He stopped, seeming to search for words. "You reminded me why I built this empire in the first place. To protect people who can't protect themselves. To make sure power is used for good instead of just control. Your mother," Elena said softly. "You're doing this for her. Maybe. Or maybe I'm doing it because it's right. Because those little girls deserve to grow up safe. Because you deserve to sleep without nightmares." He paused. "Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps. Finding you work, getting the girls enrolled in school, building stability. But tonight? Tonight, just rest. Let yourself believe you're safe. Because you are." "Thank you." The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. "Thank you for everything. Take care of your daughters, Elena. That's all the thanks I need." After they hung up, Elena sat in the quiet apartment, listening to Maya and Sophia play, feeling the solid weight of safety settling over her like a blanket. That evening she cooked dinner, real dinner with fresh ingredients from the stocked pantry. Pasta with sauce and garlic bread. Simple, ordinary, normal. The girls set the table with the dishes they found in the cabinets, treating it like an adventure. They ate together, chatting about their room, about the park Mrs. Chen had mentioned, about starting school someday. After dinner, Elena ran them a bath, the first proper bath in weeks. She washed their hair with real shampoo, not the cheap motel soap. She dried them with soft towels and dressed them in new pajamas she found in their dresser. Bedtime was negotiated. Maya wanted the top bunk, Sophia the bottom. They climbed into their beds, pulling the princess covers up to their chins, smiling at Elena with sleepy contentment. "Mama, is Mr. Moretti our angel?" Sophia asked as Elena tucked her in. "I think maybe he is, baby." "I knew it," Sophia said smugly. "Angels come when you really need them. That's what angels do." "Will he come visit us?" Maya asked from the top bunk. "I don't know. Maybe. I hope he does," Maya said. "I want to show him our room. I want to thank him for the toys." Elena kissed both their foreheads. "I'm sure you'll get to thank him. Now sleep. You need to rest so you can stay healthy." "Mama?" Sophia's voice was small in the darkness. "Are we really safe now? Really, really?" Elena thought about Dante's promise, about the security panel by the door, about Victor and Ricky being gone from the city. "Yes, baby. We're really safe now." "Good," Sophia whispered. "I was so tired of being scared." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." She left their door cracked open. They still needed to know she was close, and retreated to her own room. She stood at the window, looking out at the quiet street below, at the normal neighborhood where children played and families lived without fear. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dante. Sleep well. You're safe. I promise. Elena typed back, thank you. For everything. The girls want you to visit so they can show you their room. His response came quickly, I'd like that. Tomorrow afternoon? I want to check on all of you anyway. Tomorrow is perfect. Elena changed into the new pajamas she'd found in her drawer, soft, clean, comfortable, and climbed into the bed. A real bed with a real mattress and clean sheets that smelled like lavender. For the first time in 6 months, she didn't lie awake listening for footsteps in the hallway. Didn't keep her shoes on in case she needed to run. Didn't grip her daughter's hands while they slept, ready to wake them at the first sign of danger. For the first time in 6 months, Elena Santos felt safe. And as she drifted off to sleep in her new home, her daughters breathing peacefully in the next room, she allowed herself to believe something she'd thought was lost forever. A future. A real future built on stability instead of survival. A life where her daughters could grow up without fear. A home where they could heal. All because a dangerous man had stood behind her in a pharmacy and seen her suffering instead of walking away. All because Dante Moretti had remembered what it felt like to be helpless and had decided to use his power to make sure Elena never felt that way again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, job hunting, school enrollment, building a life from ruins. But tonight, Elena slept peacefully for the first time since Marco died. And in a high-rise office across the city, Dante Moretti looked at Sophia's crayon drawing of an angel in black and allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, his mother would be proud. That maybe using power to protect instead of destroy was exactly what she would have wanted. That maybe, after 20 years of darkness, he'd finally found a purpose worth the weight of his crown. 2 weeks passed like a dream Elena kept expecting to wake from. Every morning, she opened her eyes in a real bed with sunlight streaming through clean windows, and for the first few seconds panic would grip her. Where are we? Is this place safe? Do we need to run? Before memory settled in like a warm blanket. Safe. They were safe. The apartment had transformed from a space into a home. Maya and Sophia's drawings covered the refrigerator. Their toys sprawled across the living room floor in the beautiful chaos of childhood. The kitchen smelled like the cookies Elena had learned to bake using Mrs. Chen's recipe. Small, ordinary things that felt like miracles. Elena had found work, receptionist at a medical supply company 3 blocks away. The job had come through Rico, who'd appeared at her door one morning with a folder of opportunities that might interest her. She'd insisted on applying herself, filling out the application, going through the interview process like a normal person instead of someone who needed special favors. She'd gotten the job on her own merit. That mattered. The girls had enrolled in kindergarten at Riverside Elementary. Their first day, Elena had walked them to school holding both their hands, fighting tears as she watched them disappear through the doors with their new backpacks and lunch boxes. Normal. Everything was so beautifully, impossibly normal. But through it all, woven into the fabric of their new life, was Dante. He came by every Saturday, had done so for the past 2 weeks. Never intrusive, never demanding, just present. He'd show up at 5 p.m. carrying takeout or groceries, and the girls would squeal, "Mr. Moretti," and drag him to see whatever project they'd been working on. Last Saturday, he'd helped Sophia build a fort out of blankets and chairs while Maya showed him her homework. The week before, he'd pushed them on swings at the park, his expensive suit looking absurdly out of place on the playground equipment, but his smile genuine as the girls shrieked with laughter. Now, on the 3rd Saturday, Elena stood at her apartment door waiting for his knock, her stomach doing complicated things she didn't want to examine too closely. It wasn't gratitude anymore. It had evolved into something else. Something warm and unsettling that made her hyper-aware of how she looked when he was around, made her heart jump when his name appeared on her phone, made her daughter's casual mentions of, "when Mr. Moretti comes over," feel significant. She was falling for him. The realization had hit her 3 days ago while watching him read a bedtime story to the twins, his deep voice gentle as he did different character voices that made Sophia giggle. She was falling for a man she barely knew, a dangerous man, a man whose world operated on rules she couldn't begin to understand. It was the worst possible timing and the worst possible person. And yet, the knock came at exactly 5 p.m. Punctual as always. Elena opened the door and found Dante standing there in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater. Casual for him, though the clothes still probably cost more than her monthly rent. He looked tired, she realized. Lines of tension around his eyes that hadn't been there last week. "Bad week?" she asked without thinking. His eyebrows rose slightly. "That obvious? You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't. Much." He held up a bag from their favorite Italian restaurant. "But I made sure to bring dinner anyway." "Where are the girls?" As if summoned, Maya and Sophia came barreling around the corner, their faces lighting up when they saw him. "Mr. Moretti? You came." Sophia launched herself at him with the fearlessness of a child who'd never been given a reason to doubt his safety. Dante caught her easily, swinging her up in a practiced motion that made Elena's chest ache. When had that become natural for him? When had he learned to be gentle with children who'd once made him freeze with awkward uncertainty? "I promised I'd come, didn't I?" He set Sophia down and ruffled Maya's hair. "What did you two do this week?" "I got a gold star on my spelling test," Maya announced proudly. "And I drew a picture of our family." Sophia grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the refrigerator. "Look, see? That's Mama, and that's Maya, and that's me, and that's you." Elena's breath caught. The drawing showed 4 stick figures in front of a house. 4. Not 3. Dante stared at the picture for a long moment, something complex moving across his face. "You included me in your family? You come every Saturday," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "And you bring food. And you play with us. That's what family does." "Sophia," Elena started, not sure whether to correct her daughter or not. "She's right," Dante said quietly, still looking at the drawing. "That is what family does." He crouched to Sophia's level. "I'm honored to be in your picture." "You can have it if you want," Sophia offered generously. "I can make another one. I'd like that very much." They ate dinner together at the small dining table, spaghetti and meatballs that the girls attacked with enthusiasm. Dante had learned their preferences over the past weeks, knew that Maya liked her sauce extra, that Sophia preferred her meatballs cut into small pieces, that Elena always picked the mushrooms out of her pasta. The conversation flowed easily now. The girls chattered about school, about their friends Emma and Lucas, about the art project they were working on. Dante listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at their stories, present in a way Elena had never expected from someone with his reputation. After dinner, the girls wanted to show him their latest fort construction. More elaborate than last week's, with a sign that read, "No boys allowed," in crooked letters. "Does that include me?" Dante asked seriously. Maya considered. "You can come in. You're not a boy, you're Mr. Moretti." Elena bit back a smile as Dante solemnly crawled into the blanket fort, his tall frame folding awkwardly into the small space. She could hear the girls' giggles, hear his low voice as he admired their architecture and suggested improvements. She cleaned up dinner, listening to that sound, her daughters laughing without fear, playing with someone they trusted, being children in all the ways they deserved. When had this become her life? When had Dante Moretti shifted from dangerous savior to something else entirely? Eventually bedtime approached. The girls protested, they always did, but Elena was firm. "School tomorrow. You need sleep. Can Mr. Moretti read us a story?" Sophia asked hopefully. Dante emerged from the fort, brushing back his hair. "If your mama says it's okay." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched from the doorway as he settled between their beds, Sophia's favorite book in his hands. He read with the same character voices that had made her realize she was falling for him. Silly voices for the animals, deep voices for the monsters, soft voices for the tender moments. By the time he finished, both girls were drowsy, their eyes heavy. "Good night, Mr. Moretti," Maya mumbled. "Good night, Maya. Sleep well." "Love you," Sophia said sleepily, the words slipping out with the unself-conscious ease of a 5-year-old. Dante went very still. Elena saw his throat work as he swallowed. "I love you too, sweetheart." Elena's eyes filled with tears. She turned away before he could see, busying herself with straightening the living room. When he emerged from the girls' room, closing the door softly behind him, she'd composed herself. "Mostly. Coffee?" she offered. "I know you probably need to go, but..." "Coffee sounds perfect." They sat on the couch, the same couch where 3 weeks ago Elena had broken down crying from relief and gratitude. Now it felt different. Comfortable. "They love you," Elena said quietly. "My daughters. They really love you." "I love them too." Dante's voice was rough. "I didn't expect that. I didn't expect any of this." "What do you mean?" He set down his coffee cup, his hands clasping together. "When I saw you in that pharmacy, I thought I was just correcting an injustice. Stopping bad men from hurting innocent people. It was supposed to be simple. Help you get safe, make sure Victor and Ricky paid for their crimes, then move on. But somewhere between that pharmacy and now, you 3 became something else." He looked at her directly, his dark eyes holding hers. "You became important. Not as a responsibility or a debt or something I had to protect. You became people I care about. People I want in my life. Elena's heart hammered. Dante. I know this is complicated, he continued. I know my world is dangerous. I know you have every reason to be wary of getting close to someone like me. But I need you to know, these past weeks coming here every Saturday being part of your life, it's been the best part of mine. For us too, Elena admitted. The girls ask about you all week. Is it Saturday yet? When is Mr. Moretti coming? You've become part of our family without either of us planning it. Is that okay? With you. She thought about all the reasons she should say no. His reputation, his world, the danger that came with being connected to someone like him. She thought about protecting her daughters, about maintaining boundaries, about being sensible and careful. But then she thought about the way he read bedtime stories with silly voices. The way he'd helped Sophia build forts and pushed Maya on swings. The way he'd saved their lives and then continued showing up week after week, not because he had to but because he wanted to. More than okay, she whispered. The air between them shifted, charged with something that had been building for weeks. Dante reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Elena, I need to be honest with you about something. What? I'm falling in love with you. His voice was quiet but steady. With you and your daughters. With this life we're building. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I need you to know that this, he gestured around the apartment, this isn't obligation anymore. This is where I want to be. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared. I know. Not of you. Of this. Of letting myself need someone again. Of my daughters getting attached and then, she couldn't finish. And then I leave? Dante moved closer. Elena, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not Marco, I'm not going to be taken from you by accident or fate. And I'm not Victor, I'm not going to hurt you or your family. I'm just a man who wants to be part of your life. For as long as you'll have me. Your world is dangerous. It can be. But you're protected from that. My men watch this building. My resources keep you safe. The danger doesn't touch you. But it touches you. He smiled slightly. I've been handling danger for 20 years. I know how to navigate it. Elena looked at this complicated, dangerous man who'd saved her family and then refused to leave. Who'd shown up every Saturday like clockwork, who'd learned her daughter's favorite foods and silly voices for bedtime stories, who'd integrated himself into their lives so seamlessly she couldn't imagine Saturdays without him. Dante, if we do this, if we let this become something, I need to know you understand what you're taking on. It's not just me. It's my daughters. It's being part of a real family with responsibilities and complications, and I know exactly what I'm taking on. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I want it all, Elena. The Saturday dinners and the bedtime stories and the fort building. I want to help with homework and push swings and watch them grow up. I want to be the person they call when they need help. I want to be your partner, not just your protector. Even though it means domesticity and normal life and all the boring parts? Especially the boring parts. His smile was genuine. I've spent 20 years in darkness and danger and power games. You three are light. Safety. Peace. Why wouldn't I want that? Elena felt her resistance crumbling. The girls already love you. If this doesn't work, if you decide this isn't what you want. It is what I want. He cupped her face gently. I've never been more certain of anything. They called you part of the family. I heard. His voice was rough with emotion. Sophia's drawing, seeing myself included in your family, I've never felt anything like that. Dante, I'm falling in love with you too, Elena admitted. I've been fighting it for weeks, telling myself it's too soon, too complicated, that I'm just confused because you saved us. But it's not confusion. It's real. Then stop fighting it. He leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. Let me be part of this. Let me love you and your daughters. Let me have this. Okay, she whispered. Okay. When he kissed her, it was gentle, tentative, like he was afraid she might break. Elena's hands found his shoulders, steadying herself against the rush of emotion, and kissed him back with weeks of pent-up feeling. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. So, Dante said, a smile tugging at his lips. Does this mean I should start coming over more than just Saturdays? Elena laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt like freedom. The girls would never forgive you if you didn't. And you? I'd never forgive you either. They sat together on the couch, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest, listening to the quiet sounds of her daughters sleeping in the next room. Safe. All of them safe. Thank you, Elena said quietly. For everything. For saving us. For staying. For caring. Thank you for letting me in. For giving me a family when I thought I'd never have one. Dante's voice was rough. You saved me too, Elena. You just don't realize it. How did I save you? By reminding me that power is only worth having if you use it to protect people you love. By showing me what it feels like to be part of something good instead of just something powerful. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. By letting me be more than just the dangerous man everyone fears. They stayed like that until Dante finally had to leave. Responsibilities, business, the other parts of his life that Elena was only beginning to understand. But at the door he lingered. Same time next Saturday? Or sooner, Elena said. The girls have been asking if you could come to their school play next Friday. Maya's playing a tree and Sophia's a flower. Very prestigious roles. Dante's face lit up. I'd be honored. What time? 7 p.m. Fair warning, it's going to be chaotic and the kids will forget their lines and it'll probably run long. Sounds perfect. He kissed her softly. Good night, Elena. Good night, Dante. After he left, Elena locked the door, not from fear anymore but from simple routine, and checked on her daughters. Both sleeping peacefully, Sophia clutching her stuffed rabbit, Maya with her homework folder carefully placed on her nightstand for the morning. Elena pulled out her phone and texted Dante, "The girl's drawing is still on the fridge if you want to take it." Sophia really did mean it when she said you could have it. His response came quickly, "I'll get it next time. I like seeing myself on your refrigerator. Reminds me I belong somewhere." Elena smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "You do belong here. With us. Best place I've ever belonged." She got ready for bed, washing her face, changing into comfortable pajamas, following the routine that had become second nature. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the beginning of something new, not just safety and survival but actual happiness. Actual love. Before turning off the light, she pulled out her phone one more time and looked at the photo Rico had sent her last week. The twins on the playground, Dante pushing them on swings, all three of them laughing in the afternoon sun. A family. They'd become a family without quite meaning to. 3 broken people and one man trying to make up for the family he'd lost by building a new one. Elena set the phone down and closed her eyes, Dante's words echoing in her mind, "You saved me too." Maybe that's what love was. Not one person rescuing another, but 2 damaged souls finding each other and building something beautiful from the ruins. Maybe Dante Moretti wasn't just the man who saved them that night in the pharmacy. Maybe he was the man who'd been waiting for them all along, waiting for a reason to use his power for good, waiting for people who could see past his reputation to the lonely man underneath, waiting for a family to call his own. And maybe Elena and her daughters were exactly what he'd been searching for. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Work and school and the complicated dance of building a relationship with someone from a different world. But tonight, Elena Santos slept peacefully, knowing that for the first time since Marco's death, she wasn't facing the future alone. She had Dante. The girls had Dante. They had each other. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The pharmacy looked the same. Same fluorescent lights, same aisles of medicine, same counter where desperate people counted change and prayed it would be enough. Elena stood outside on the sidewalk, Maya and Sophia flanking her, now 10 years old and so much taller than that terrified night 5 years ago. "Mama, why did we come here?" Maya asked, squeezing Elena's hand. Elena looked down at her daughters, healthy, confident, thriving. Maya's blonde hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, her backpack covered in patches from the art club she loved. Sophia wore her soccer jersey under her jacket, a medal from last week's game still pinned proudly to the strap. They looked nothing like the feverish, frightened children who'd barely been able to stand that October night. They looked like normal kids. Happy kids. Because, Elena said softly, this is where everything changed. Where we stopped running and started living. Sophia studied the pharmacy entrance. "This is where you met Papa Dante?" "Yes, baby. This is where I met him." The word Papa still made Elena's chest warm. The girls had started calling Dante that about a year after the wedding. Tentatively at first, asking permission, making sure it was okay to call someone other than Marco Papa. Elena had cried and told them Marco would be happy they had someone to love and protect them. Dante had excused himself to the bathroom and came back with red-rimmed eyes. Now it was natural. Dante was Papa. Marco was their first daddy who watched over them from heaven. Both were loved. Both were remembered. "It doesn't look scary," Maya said, peering through the window. "It was terrifying that night." Elena's voice was quiet with memory. "I thought we were going to die. I thought I'd failed you both." "But you didn't," Sophia said firmly. "You saved us by bringing us here. By being brave." Elena smiled. Her daughters had grown into remarkable young women, kind, confident, strong. Maya wanted to be an artist. Sophia wanted to be a doctor, specifically a pediatrician who helped sick kids. Both excelled in school, had friends, played sports, did normal kid things without the weight of trauma crushing them. Therapy had helped. Dr. Morrison, the kind woman Dante had found who specialized in childhood trauma, had worked with the girls for 2 years, helping them process what they'd been through, teaching them that safety was real and permanent. Elena had gone too. Had learned that she didn't have to be hypervigilant anymore, that she could trust the security Dante provided, that letting herself be happy wasn't a betrayal of the suffering they'd endured. The door of the pharmacy opened and Mr. Chin emerged, his kind eyes crinkling as he saw them. He was older now, more gray in his hair, but his smile was the same. Mrs. Moretti. And the girls? What a wonderful surprise. The girls had been babies the last time he'd seen them, feverish and terrified. Now they stood tall and healthy, smiling as they greeted him. We're doing a thing, Sophia explained. Mama wanted to show us where our story started. The night that changed everything, Mr. Chin said, understanding immediately. He looked at Elena. You three look wonderful. Happy. I'm so glad. Thanks to you, Elena said. You were kind to us that night. That mattered. And thanks to Mr. Moretti. Mr. Chin's expression turned knowing. How is he? I heard you two got married. 3 years ago. Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her wedding ring. Simple gold band that matched Dante's, nothing ostentatious, just a promise made permanent. He's wonderful. We're all wonderful. They chatted for a few more minutes, Mr. Chin asking about school, the girls proudly sharing their achievements, before saying goodbye. As they walked back to the car where Rico waited, Elena felt a sense of completion. She'd needed to come back here to see this place through the lens of who they'd become instead of who they'd been. Where to now, Mrs. Moretti? Rico asked as they climbed into the SUV. He was older too, some gray at his temples, but still Dante's right hand, still watching over them with quiet dedication. The cemetery, Elena said. Then home. The girls knew this route well. They came every few months, sometimes with Elena, sometimes with Dante, sometimes all together. Today felt important enough to warrant a family visit. Marco's grave was in the older section of Riverside Cemetery, under a spreading oak tree. His headstone was simple, Marco Santos. Beloved husband and father. Gone too soon but never forgotten. Elena knelt and placed fresh flowers in the holder. Maya and Sophia knelt beside her, their small hands touching the cool marble. Hi Daddy, Maya said softly. We came to tell you about our lives. I got an A on my science project, Sophia added. The one about cells. And Maya won an art contest. Her painting is going to be in a real gallery. Elena smiled, listening to her daughters talk to their father. They'd been so young when he died, barely 5 years old, but she and Dante had made sure Marco's memory stayed alive. Pictures throughout the house. Stories about him. Visits to his grave so the girls understood they came from love, that Marco had wanted them, had loved them, had built a family with Elena that mattered even though it had been cut short. Papa Dante is coaching Sophia's soccer team now, Maya continued. He's really bad at it but everyone likes him anyway because he brings snacks. And Mama's the manager at her company now, Sophia said proudly. She got promoted again. Papa says she's going to run the whole business someday. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She'd worked her way up from receptionist to office manager to operations director over 5 years. The medical supply company had recognized her work ethic, her attention to detail, her ability to solve problems. She'd built a career on her own merit, had proven she could stand on her own 2 feet even while being married to one of the city's most powerful men. That independence mattered. To her and to Dante. We miss you, Elena said quietly, her hand on the headstone. But we're okay, Marco. We're more than okay. The girls are thriving. I'm happy. We have a good life, the life he wanted for us. She paused. And Dante, he's been everything we needed. He loves them like they're his own. He loves me the way you loved me. I think you'd approve. A breeze rustled through the oak leaves, warm despite the autumn air. Elena chose to believe it was Marco's blessing. We have to go, Maya said. Papa's making dinner tonight and we're supposed to help. He's making his special lasagna, Sophia added. Even though last time he burned it. They said their goodbyes and walked back to the car. As Rico drove them home, the girls chattered about their week, about upcoming school events, about normal life things that would have seemed impossible 5 years ago. Home was a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, nothing ostentatious, just a comfortable family home with a yard where the girls could play and neighbors who waved hello. Dante had wanted to buy them a mansion, had insisted he could afford it, but Elena had refused. This was perfect, normal, safe theirs. As they pulled into the driveway, Elena saw Dante's car already there. Her heart did that familiar flutter it always did when she knew he was home. The girls burst through the door. "Papa, we're home." Dante emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," a gag gift from Elena that he wore with complete seriousness. His hair was graying at the temples now, his face showing lines that hadn't been there 5 years ago, but his smile when he saw his family was exactly the same. "How was your pilgrimage?" he asked, pulling Elena in for a kiss. "Good. Emotional but good." She breathed in his familiar scent, cologne and coffee, and home. "Mr. Chin says hello. The pharmacy looks exactly the same." "That place should have a plaque," Dante said. Here, Dante Moretti discovered he had a heart. Would save everyone time. Elena laughed and swatted his arm. "You always had a heart. You just needed a reason to show it. And you gave me 3 excellent reasons." He looked at the girls. "How's your father's grave?" They'd long ago established that Marco was Daddy, or our first father, and Dante was Papa, or our father who's here. It worked. It honored both men without diminishing either. "Good," Maya said. "We told him about school and the art contest and Sophia's soccer. And we told him you're a terrible coach," Sophia added helpfully. Dante clutched his chest dramatically. "Betrayed by my own daughters. After I bought the team-matching jerseys." "You bought jerseys because you didn't know how to teach defense," Sophia said, giggling. "Details." Dante herded them toward the kitchen. "Come help with dinner. Your mother thinks I'll burn the lasagna again, and I need witnesses to prove I can actually cook." Elena watched them go, her husband and daughters laughing and teasing, completely comfortable with each other. This was her family. Built from tragedy and pain, yes, but built nonetheless. Strong and loving and permanent. She pulled out her phone and texted Rico, "Thank you for taking us today. For everything over these years." His response was immediate. "My honor, Mrs. Moretti. Your family." Family. That word meant something different now. Not just blood but choice. Not just survival but love. Dinner was chaotic in the best way, Dante teaching the girls to layer lasagna, Maya getting sauce on her nose, Sophia stealing cheese, Elena supervising and laughing and taking photos she'd treasure forever. The lasagna went into the oven without burning, and they set the table together while it cooked. Over dinner they talked about their days. The girls shared school gossip. Dante mentioned a new community center his foundation was opening, the Isabella Moretti Center for Families in Crisis, offering medical assistance, legal aid, housing support for people facing situations like Elena had faced. 20 families have gone through the program so far, Dante said. All of them are stable now. Safe. Elena squeezed his hand under the table. The foundation had been his idea, a way to honor his mother and sister while helping others. It was funded by the money they'd seized from Victor and Ricky, plus Dante's own contributions. Elena worked with them sometimes, helping families navigate the system, offering hope from someone who'd been exactly where they were. Victor and Ricky had never returned to the city. Last Rico heard, Victor was working construction in Arizona, every paycheck garnished for restitution. Ricky was in Nevada washing dishes. Both men lived with the consequences of their choices, neither wealthy nor powerful nor able to hurt anyone again. The corrupt officials they'd exposed had all faced justice. Detective Morrison was in prison. Judge Holloway had been disbarred. Sarah Chin had fled the state but eventually turned herself in, serving time for her role in the trafficking operation. The Volkov brothers had been a different story, that had required federal intervention, FBI task forces, international cooperation. But 2 years ago they'd finally been arrested, their trafficking ring dismantled. The children they'd taken were beyond recovery, scattered across continents, lost to systems no one could navigate, but no more children would suffer at their hands. Dante carried that weight quietly. The children he couldn't save haunted him. But he channeled that pain into the foundation, into making sure other families got help before it was too late. After dinner they did homework together at the kitchen table. Dante helping Sophia with math, Elena reviewing Maya's essay, all of them working side by side like families do. Normal. Ordinary. Beautiful. Bedtime came too soon. The girls protested, they were 10 now, too old for early bedtimes, but school started early and they needed sleep. Elena supervised teeth brushing and pajama wearing while Dante tidied the kitchen. When she came downstairs he was standing at the window looking out at their quiet street. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing her cheek to his back. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How different my life is from 5 years ago." His hands covered hers. "How I used to come home to an empty penthouse in silence. How I'd sit alone and wonder if power was all I'd ever have. And now I come home to noise and chaos and lasagna burning. To daughters who roast my coaching skills and a wife who laughs when I mess up. To a life that matters beyond control and fear." He turned in her arms. "You gave me that, Elena. You and the girls. You gave it to us first. You gave us safety and stability and love. Everything we have." "Everything we have," he corrected. "This isn't mine or yours. It's ours. We built this together." Elena stood on her toes and kissed him. "I love you, Dante Moretti. I love you, Elena Moretti." He pulled her close. "Thank you for letting a dangerous man into your life. Thank you for proving that dangerous doesn't mean bad. That power can protect instead of destroy." She smiled against his chest. "Thank you for being our angel in black. The girls still call me that sometimes. Because it's true. You saved us that night. You keep saving us every day." They stood together in their kitchen in their home with their daughters sleeping safely upstairs. 5 years of healing, of building, of learning to trust again. 5 years of Dante proving that the man behind the reputation was worth knowing. 5 years of Elena proving she was strong enough to stand beside him as an equal partner. "Mama? Papa?" Sophia's voice came from upstairs. "Can you come read a story? We'll be right there." Elena called back. They climbed the stairs together, hand in hand, and found both girls in Maya's room, already under the covers, waiting. "We wanted to hear the story," Maya said. "About the pharmacy. About how you met." Elena and Dante exchanged glances. They'd told this story before, had sanitized it for young ears, but maybe tonight, maybe now that the girls were older, they could tell it more honestly. "Once upon a time," Elena began, settling on one side of the bed while Dante took the other, "there was a mama who was very scared and very alone. She told them about being in the pharmacy with her last $10, about praying for a miracle, about the moment a stranger got in line behind her and everything changed." Dante added his perspective, seeing a woman who reminded him of his mother, feeling compelled to help, making a choice that altered the trajectory of his life. "And then he saved us," Sophia said when they finished. "We saved each other," Dante corrected gently. "Your mama saved me just as much as I saved her." "How?" Maya asked. "By showing me what my power was for. By giving me a family when I thought I'd lost my chance. By letting me be more than just the scary man everyone feared." He looked at Elena. "Your mama taught me that love is stronger than power. That family matters more than control. That being soft with people you care about doesn't make you weak. And Papa taught us that we're safe," Elena added. "That we don't have to be afraid anymore. That good things can last." "Is that why you got married?" Sophia asked. "Because you saved each other?" "We got married because we love each other," Elena said. "Because we want to spend our lives together. Because you two needed a papa who would love you and protect you and push you on swings even though his arms get tired. And because your mama needed someone who would stand beside her as an equal partner," Dante added. "Who would support her career and her independence and her strength. Who would be her husband, not her savior." "That's a good love story," Maya said sleepily. "It's the best love story," Sophia agreed, her eyes already closing. Elena and Dante tucked them in one more time, kissing foreheads, whispering, "I love you," turning off lights. In the hallway they paused outside the girls' room. "They're going to be okay," Elena said softly. "Despite everything they went through, they're going to be okay. Because of you." Dante pulled her close. "Because you never gave up. Because you kept them alive and safe until I could help. Because you're the strongest person I know. We're all stronger together." They walked to their own bedroom, their sanctuary where wedding photos hung on the walls alongside pictures of the girls, where Elena's work files sat on the desk next to Dante's business documents, where two lives had merged into one partnership. As they got ready for bed, following the comfortable routine of 5 years together, Elena felt gratitude wash over her. For this life. For this man. For her daughters sleeping safely down the hall. For the journey from that desperate pharmacy night to this peaceful bedroom. "Dante," she said as they climbed into bed. Do you ever regret it? Taking us on? Your life would be so much simpler without." He silenced her with a kiss. "My life would be empty without you. Simpler isn't better. This," he gestured around their room, their house, their life, "this is everything." Elena settled into his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady. Strong. Safe. I'm glad you got in line behind me that night, she whispered. Best decision I ever made. His arms tightened around her. Marrying you was the second best. Only second? Saving you and the girls was first. Marrying you was the natural consequence of that decision. Both excellent choices. Elena smiled in the darkness. I love you, Dante Moretti. My angel in black. My husband. My partner. My everything. I love you, Elena Moretti. My second chance. My family. My home. They fell asleep tangled together, two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Two people who proved that sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the most powerful. Two people who saved each other and created a family that would last forever. Outside, Rico sat in his car across the street, keeping watch like he had for 5 years. Protecting the family that had given Dante Moretti purpose. Guarding the woman and children who transformed a dangerous man into a devoted father and husband. The lights in the Moretti house went dark one by one. The neighborhood settled into peaceful silence. Enrico smiled, satisfied that tonight, like every night for the past 5 years, the family he protected slept safely. Because that's what you did for family. You showed up. You protected them. You made sure they never had to be afraid again. And the Morettis, all 4 of them, would never be afraid again.